Bronies completely traumatized a generation. Here's how.
I used to wonder what friendship could be. Until you walked in these magic with me. Take adventure and the fun. A beautiful heart, faithful and strong. Sharing kindness and easy feet. And magic makes it all complete to have mine. So you know you are my very best friend.
You're probably familiar with what a brony is. If you aren't, a brony is basically a male fan of My Little Pony who is usually an adult or teenager. The story goes that on the website 4chan, people were watching the new My Little Pony show back in 2010 semi-ironically, but then ended up actually liking it and becoming sort of obsessed with it. Fans of the show would call each other Pony Bro, which was then turned into Bronies, and well, the rest is history. It seems odd that so many adult men would be so in love with a children's show. But the phenomenon was a very, very real thing. It came to the point where there were conventions, mainstream news attention, and just a lot of buzz around Bronies and My Little Pony. Now obviously, My Little Pony had a huge fan base of actual children being the target demographic. These being young Gen Z children, who probably had access to the internet. Now the thing about the Brony community is that it was definitely not the safest place for a kid to be. A lot of Bronies were totally sweet and just had a pure enjoyment for this innocent show. And that's great, there was nothing wrong with that. However, a lot of Bronies liked the show in ways that weren't appropriate, let's just say that. Which unfortunately led a lot of kids to be exposed to very, very disturbing things that they really should not be seeing. So join me today as I explain to you how Bronies traumatized a generation. To give some context, I was a brony as a kid. My brony origin story basically comes from one day that me and my brother were on the Hasbro website playing Flash games, probably relating to Nerf or Star Wars or something. My brother was just clicking around the website and found an episode of My Little Pony. A full one, and this was back in 2010, so the show had basically just come out. I assumed that they were putting episodes online for promotional reasons. Regardless, he clicked on it, and I was like, that's for little girls. Then, we watched the episode, and we both really liked it. I was like 6 or 7 years old at the time, so, you know, I enjoyed it. After this, we both sought out more pony content. We just happened to have gotten a TV with cable connection on that same day, which led us to find the Hub Network, which is where My Little Pony was being aired alongside some other shows. And then the rest was basically history. We watched more My Little Pony, and we both became big fans of it. And it stayed relatively contained, like most children watching a cartoon show would. We had some toys, we introduced some friends to it, but that was about it. Until my curiosity got the better of me. So, as a kid who was getting more and more internet access the older he got, I ended up researching some brony stuff when I was about 8 years old. Now, I didn't know what a brony was at the time. I didn't know any of the fandom, really. I just liked the cute pony show. But, after searching a bit online, I was introduced to this massive fandom filled with grown men. And at the time, I thought it was cool as hell. Now, cool isn't the first thing that most people think of when it comes to bronies, but as a little kid, having so many grown adults be into something that you're also into makes it feel cool. It makes it feel like relevant and like a big kid sort of thing. So learning about bronies, I thought they were awesome. I ended up calling myself a brony and talking about it to my friends, and just finding more and more fan-made content. It was great and a lot of fun.
I'm awesome. I'm a brony. So is Nick. Yes, so is Nick. I'm a brony, 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 brony. Brony style.
My favorite pony by far was Derpy Hooves, a character who was adored by the fandom, coming from just an animation era where her eyes were a little bit off. The fandom loved her so much that she was referenced in the show by name, which then led to its own controversy, which is a whole video on its own.
Now, careful, Derpy!
But there were tons of cool animations of the characters and Derpy and all this stuff. However, you know, I said there was a lot of adult men with intentions that weren't, you know, the most innocent when it came to this show. Well, unfortunately, it was really easy for a kid to stumble upon that sort of content. Something that was very popular at the time was Creepypasta. Internet horror stories that were often not the best in terms of writing or story, but had captivated internet audiences for a while. Of course, My Little Pony being popular had its fair share of creepypastas. One of which being Cupcakes, a seemingly innocent title. But the story and animations alongside it were anything but innocent. There was a user on YouTube that went by Mr. Davie. He made My Little Pony parody animations, and they were strikingly similar to the show. Little is known about Mr. Davie, but something that he formerly worked at Hasbro, something that he's just like a career animator, or just a guy with a lot of free time and really good animation skills. Regardless, Mr. Davie created a few videos on My Little Pony that were disturbing, to say the very least, one of which being Cupcakes. For context, one of the characters in the show, Pinkie Pie, runs a little cupcake bake shop. She's generally considered to be kind of a crazy character, and even had a mental breakdown in one episode, which led people to make a story where her cupcakes were actually made of other ponies. So there was an animation made off of the story, and it starts off innocent enough. There's a fun song, the ponies are dancing, until Rainbow Dash gets knocked out. Rainbow Dash wakes up in a dark room, strapped to an operating table, with her wings stabbed by hooks being pulled up. She sees the disembodied stuffed heads of characters that hadn't been on the show for a little while, and makes a grim realization. Pinkie Pie then pulls up a chainsaw, with a deranged smile on her face. Pinkie Pie then cuts Rainbow Dash's wings off, covers herself in blood, and it is gory. They really spared no detail when making this. However, throughout the song, whenever there's an instrumental riff, it just cuts to a cute animation of the two characters dancing, and then cuts right back to the horror. I'm obviously not going to show you, but eventually the character is cut open and her organs are pulled out in gruesome detail like the rest of the video. We then see the gory cupcakes that result of this entire operation. This video was very popular and was watched by so many children who didn't know any better, which honestly is very sad. It is a terrifying video. I watched it as a kid. I couldn't make it through the entire thing, but this is definitely one of those that kept me up at night. And I'm willing to bet, like, maybe hundreds of thousands of other children who were just fans of this cartoon. The way that it started off innocent and then turned into a disturbing mess, really just fun to watch. For anyone, really. Even rewatching it now as an adult, it's not even, like, funny. It's just gratuitous, really. Mr. Davie, the same animator, also made a video by the name of Smile HD. This one is honestly kind of worse. Again, this video was incredibly well animated and starts off very cute and sweet. It's got a remix of the iconic Smile song from the show. We see Pinkie Pie running through a field alongside the main six having a picnic. She runs over, but instead of a wholesome little moment, she kicks one in the face and her head is ripped straight off, again, with very gratuitous detail. We are shown all these little ponies' faces of pure fear and anguish right before they're about to be killed, or we see them watching each other and then are treated to relentless gore. Something I should mention is that the re-uploads of this video, both of them really, are not age restricted. No, they are fully just fine for everyone to watch, which honestly, I'm not one for age-restricting content. I think most content shouldn't be age-restricted, if it's not made for children. However, this is an exception to me. I think this absolutely should be age-restricted. Seemingly, YouTube doesn't care. It'd be really ironic if my video gets age-restricted because I'm talking about the topics, but I guess we'll just see. Throughout Smile HD, some of the other characters come in and try to defend their friends. The video gives you a sense of hope that maybe the deaths have been avenged. But no, if only it could be that way. Me and many other children who watched this video always wished that the other characters could, like, kill Pinkie Pie and get revenge and avenge their friends. But it never happened. No matter how many times you watched it, it didn't change. It's like watching Revenge of the Sith and feel like, oh, maybe Order 66 won't happen this time. No, it's gonna happen. It's inevitable. Throughout the video, the deaths get more and more brutal. The animation and choreography is genuinely really well done. The animation is fluid, the action is snappy, and it all pairs up to the music really well. It seems as though Pinkie Pie is about to be defeated. However, unfortunately, she uses an earth-shattering beam and just destroys the planet, basically. I mean, I think it's fair to say that it's an insane video. Personally, I found this one more traumatizing than Cupcakes as a little kid. It would stay in my mind, and it kind of altered the way that I viewed the character of Pinkie Pie whenever watching the show. It was hard to not associate this video with the actual canon show, on account of how good the animation was and just how much it would stick in your brain. If you look at the comments of any of these videos, you'll see so many comments from people who grew up with them, and it's kind of sad to see, because a lot of people share the same stories as I do. There's another one of Mr. Davie's animations. This one was by the name of Derpy Gets Pranked. Derpy being my favorite character. Derpy Gets Pranked had a very nice thumbnail and started off very innocent. Looked like a scene from the show, like everything else. The character was associated with muffins, so there's a muffin placed out on a plate by these 3 child characters. Derpy then flies down and, well, takes the bait. They cut a rope that's attached to an anvil that was hanging above, and I always found the way that her wings continued to flap to be much more disturbing than her just being killed, because she's still alive through the torment of it all, which, it's bad. It's nasty. It's still hard to watch to this day, if I'm being completely honest. This next one wasn't technically made by Bronies. It was actually a moment from the show that scared a lot of kids. There was an episode on the show by the name of Lesson 0, which featured the main character Twilight Sparkle basically going insane. The normally calm and good-natured character becomes a manic mess, and visually has this very, very creepy, enlarged smile, which was used in a lot of My Little Pony creepypasta content. You may be familiar with it even if you never watched My Little Pony, or even were in any sort of brony subculture to begin with. For good reason, this freaked a lot of kids out. Definitely wasn't the worst thing in the world. There was much worse. But it still shows that My Little Pony, even as a show, still had some scary moments. The show wasn't necessarily for little kids. It was kind of, I'd say, like 7 to 12-year-old age range. So there were moments of violence and scary imagery younger children who were watching the show really did not like. Now, another example of kind of terrifying brony stuff was a video by the name of Ponies Sliding into Boxes. Kind of. So there was this video which showed ponies sliding into boxes with some cute music in the background. It was adorable, very heartwarming and cute video. It was basically just an animation on loop, but with different characters. However, someone took this animation, redid it, and then added one where a pony slides into a box of nails. This leaves the floor to start pooling with blood, and then the pony to comedically say, this video wasn't the worst thing in the world in terms of traumatizing brony things, but the way that it snuck its way into such a cute and innocent series of videos was really what made it the most disturbing in my opinion. It went from just genuinely cute and calming stuff to then a pony sliding into a box of nails. I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory. As a little kid, I loved watching the ponies sliding into box videos, but I was always like on edge watching them because I wasn't sure if it was going to slip into that animation, and many other people share that exact same sentiment and feeling. Now, there was another animation by the name of Lil Miss Rarity, which was probably the most mature out of these so far. Now, this started off as a fanfiction on a Tumblr blog, and then was adapted into an animation series on the YouTube channel Little Miss J. The video starts off with the main character, Twilight Sparkle, using a scalpel to extract the other character, Rarity's horn, which accessed her memories. We then see what happened in the past. While working, she was scratched by her cat and then proceeded to throw it against a wall, killing it. Terrified by her actions, she attempts to bring the cat back to life via the means of this very creepy little doll. We then see her little sister tied up. The story's a bit hard to actually understand by watching the video, and honestly, I don't feel like reading My Little Pony fanfiction right now, so you're just gonna have to go with my interpretation. Rarity continues to inflict pain on other ponies, her friends, and stuff like that. She ends up burning a heart-shaped mark onto herself, and then starts hallucinating. She gets arrested, and then this, like, Resident Evil creature comes out of her stomach, and we see more disturbing imagery. The thing about this video, too, is that the designs of the ponies are, like, weirdly humanized and, like, seemingly kind of sexualized, too, which gives it a strange, kind of gross feeling. It's definitely not my thing. And I was fortunate enough not to watch this video as a little kid. I'd seen the thumbnail many times, but I never actually ended up watching it, and I'm glad that I didn't. Now, something that the Brony community is known for throughout the internet is, and I'm gonna say this without getting demonetized, the jar. So, how do I say this? There was once a man on 4chan who had 2 little Rainbow Dash dolls. He then proceeded to fill it with his seed and put the little pony inside of that jar filled with that substance. And then he put it on a radiator, and so it caramelized, turning the liquid brown, which was all being posted to 4chan to the delight and dismay of many. Bronies haven't really been able to escape this one guy's actions because, yeah, it's really gross. Like, it's really fucking disgusting. If you want to learn more about it, Wang's got a great video on the subject, and he eventually ended up actually interviewing the guy who did the thing. But yeah, so that is a thing that happened within the Brony community and was memed about and talked about quite a lot, and especially more in current days. It's nasty, it happened, and unfortunately, some children at the time were aware of this. I, again, fortunate enough to not be. Thank God, but still. Now, the thing about My Little Pony and Brony culture is that it heavily kind of tied into furry culture. Now, most bronies weren't furries, but a lot of furries were bronies, if that makes sense. Just simply because, you know, anthropomorphic characters in a TV show, that's kind of what furries like, you know? So a lot of the stranger things that furries are into ended up having art of it being produced with My Little Pony characters and uploaded to YouTube and DeviantArt and all sorts of places. There's one video that I remember that would pop up a lot that was basically a video of what I believe was like a Flash game on DeviantArt or Fur Affinity, of Rainbow Dash being tied with a hose attached to a keg of apple cider, which was heavily featured in the show. And this is like a revenge sort of thing by the other character, Applejack. She's tied up a friend and is now force-feeding her apple cider. This video then shows Rainbow Dash being filled with said cider. The stomach inflates so much that it's like a circle and the limbs are just kind of popping out the side, and throughout the video she's like complaining about it, and it's really weird. It grossed me out as a little kid, I'm gonna be honest. And this also ended up leading a lot of children to develop sort of like inflation fetishes later in life. For those who aren't chronically online, there's a lot of really weird art of ponies being inflated. Really of anything being inflated, but ponies were a very popular subject matter at the time. And it was really easy to find everywhere, really. I don't know why, but it was like, if you were looking up My Little Pony stuff, you were gonna find this shit. The way that they had Rainbow Dash, like, uncomfortable through the whole process and, like, being upset about it really just kind of, like, made the whole thing worse. It would have been less disturbing without dialogue, but yeah, it was there. Not a fun thing to watch as a little kid. People like to deem this sort of thing the Elsagate before Elsagate. I don't personally see it that way. However, in a future video on the topic of Elsagate, I will cover this sort of thing alongside another channel by the name of Kphoria. That is a topic for another video in the future. Now, something that a lot of kids did, including myself, was looking up the characters on Google Images, either to just look at different art of them or to draw them. I was big into drawing little ponies as a kid. And again, my favorite was Derpy, so I'd often just look up literally just Derpy hooves on Google Images with safe search on, which, you know, the first like 50 or so pictures would be completely innocent, either screenshots from the show or just fan art of the character. Completely fine. However, once you started scrolling down a bit more, you'd be met with a lot of really nasty content. Whether it was more inflation stuff, weird nudity. There was this odd subsection of pony art where it was like the characters, but they had human-sized, like, breasts that would just hang down because they're on all fours, but they would still be like down there. It was really strange and just looked anatomically all over the place, but it was really nasty for me as a little kid. I had no interest in even looking at human boobs at the time, so, you know, I wasn't wanting to be looking at Derpy Hooves' weird pony human boobs, you know? Another big thing that scared a lot of kids was Rainbow Factory, a creepypasta and YouTube video that portrayed Rainbow Dash killing different ponies and using their blood to create the rainbows seen in the show. Now, for those who don't know, in the show there was a rainbow factory, which is where the rainbows came from. It was built in the clouds and it had this like cute, mysterious kind of aura to it. I personally really liked it whenever it showed up in the show as a little kid, but bronies basically like creepypasta'd their way into this and made a lot of creepypastas and fanfictions around the Rainbow Factory. And that basically, the rainbows that you see can only be made with the blood of dead ponies. The evil, depraved nature of the characters at play here was really disturbing for a lot of different kids. Just the concept of it was not fun to think about at all. Many older fans, mostly the edgier teenagers, were obsessed with the Rainbow Factory. And for decent reason too. Looking back on it, I can see the appeal of this dark and edgy nature to it. But too many children were exposed to it, leading them to just feel gross and bad after watching this sort of content. Of course, by no means am I saying that this shouldn't have existed in any sense. Kids finding it is essentially inevitable, but regardless of that, it was still a pretty disturbing thing to see. Another example is Pony.mov by Hot Diggity Demon. You may recognize this YouTuber by his news series by the name of Brain Dump, which is really well made and really funny. It's good stuff. But he was part of the Brony community back in the day, and created a series of videos that are now known as Pony.mov. These videos are made for the sake of being edgy and disturbing and gross and absolutely not anything like the show. The characters were all super mean-spirited, and it was violent, but it was pretty funny to a lot of people. It was hard to find a Pony.mov video that wasn't disturbing, but there was one big one that really scared a lot of kids, and this was Shed.mov. In this series, the often well-mannered and sweet Fluttershy character was an evil psycho murderer who sounded like Fat Albert. Long story short, this video features the ponies going into Fluttershy's shed and seeing the skeletons and bloody remains of a bunch of different animals. In the show, Fluttershy loved animals and cared for them, so seeing this was a wild juxtaposition. Hell, they showed Derpy Hoove's remains, she's turned into like a skinned toaster oven thing. Fluttershy then enters the room and takes a chainsaw to Rainbow Dash's head. It's got a strong YouTube content rating, but it's not age restricted. And honestly, it's kind of sad to see the comments of people recounting how much this scared and disturbed them as little kids. But that really just was the nature of being a kid brony back in the early 2010s. It was really hard to avoid this sort of content. And a lot of people would find it even when not looking for it. Another thing that you'd find a lot of the time too was gore art of these characters, or just general creepy things as well. And something that a lot of people unfortunately came across were the fluffy ponies. I want to say, like, do not research for this topic because it's really, really nasty stuff. For whatever reason. I've tried to understand it, but I just cannot. There is a large subsection of people who enjoy art of these very cute little fluffy pony characters being abused and treated in horrible ways. This sort of content was widespread and is still being made to this day, and is even appearing on TikTok for some people. Initially, people were really confused as to why this sort of thing existed, and why it was so awful and gratuitous. Some people thought it was a fetish thing, which for some people it is. Some thought that it was just being spread and shared because people wanted to be edgy and cool. That could definitely be the case for some. Regardless of what the intention was, the content is always just absolutely hideous. And it was just genuinely awful and deplorable artwork, especially of such cute and innocent characters. To anyone who did end up seeing this sort of thing as a kid, I am so sorry that you had to go through that. Like, I'm genuinely feeling it for you. Like, that is awful. If you see a video or pictures or comics starting off with these fluffy ponies, don't continue reading, don't continue watching, because you're probably gonna see something terrifying. This video might make it seem like the Brony community was awful and, like, deplorable, but it really wasn't. There were so many really sweet and nice individuals in the community, and the general atmosphere of it was a really supportive and kind one. A lot of bronies were on the autism spectrum, and the community ended up becoming really a safe space for those individuals, where they could interact with other people and have ease of communication with fans of the same media. It was really sweet. This was especially a thing at BronyCon, which, as it sounds, was a brony convention. There were multiple different ones, but BronyCon was the big official one. This took place in Baltimore, Maryland. The first BronyCon meetup was in 2011, and continued to grow more and more popular every year, with eventually dying in 2019 after attendance numbers majorly dropped, and the My Little Pony show was ending, and the fandom just wasn't really a big thing anymore. Now, as you'd expect, attendance of BronyCon was mostly grown men, but there were a lot of children there too, and I was one of those children. I had begged my mother to take me to BronyCon, and eventually, yeah, we ended up making the trip to Baltimore and going to BronyCon. For her, it was a very bizarre and surreal experience, but for me and my little brother, we were having the time of our lives. The whole time, my mom secretly wished that we would grow out of being bronies, while me and my brother chanted that we'd be bronies for life. Luckily, yeah, her wishes were granted. We are no longer in the brony community. Not that there's anything wrong with being a brony, but, you know. But regardless, BronyCon initially was actually really smart about how they handled their NSFW content. Now, obviously, there are a lot of people in the brony community who are heavily attracted to the My Little Pony characters. They will look at content that is NSFW of these characters, and they will, you know,
watch porn relating to ponies.
What? What?
It's called clopping.
There were a lot of cloppers in this Brony community, and so there was a lot of art that appealed to that. And this was on partial display at BronyCon. See, they had rules where you couldn't show full-on NSFW content during the daytime, because that's when the children would be out. However, when it turned dark and most of the children would leave, the vendors could then reveal their NSFW content. But this didn't stop people from having like borderline stuff up. I remember there was a lot of art of the characters as humans in very small bikinis, or like body pillows of the different characters that, well, some of them were like child characters on these body pillows, which even as a little kid I was not happy about. I found it very gross and disturbing. And there was just a lot of weird stuff. There were those titty mouse pads, but you know, it was like ponies, plushies with holes in areas that implied bad things. And you could just sometimes even tell by the vendors. Some vibes were just a bit off. But yeah, some of the stuff at BronyCon was kind of rough for a kid to see. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people who grew up being My Little Pony fans feel very deeply affected by the content they consumed as a kid. Many people feel that watching this incredibly disturbing and violent content as a small child affected them neurologically in ways that they really wish that they weren't affected. They feel desensitized to gore, violence, and some even feel like they were led to be hypersexual after viewing so much of this content as children. This was an incredibly irresponsible thing in the Brony community to do, in my personal opinion. Now, obviously the content wasn't made for children, but it is a children's show. I understand there was an adult audience, but the show is still fundamentally made for kids. They should have known that children would be exposed to that sort of content, because they were, and it affected them in a lot of different ways. I don't feel as though I was personally affected in those ways by this Brony content. It scared me, but I was a mass consumer of horror content as a small child on the internet, which I think has led me to have a lot of love for horror as a genre and as a storytelling means. I'm also very interested in gothic subcultures, and I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing, but still, I mean, I wouldn't be making these videos now if I didn't watch all that shit as a kid, so it obviously had some sort of effect on me. It really is saddening to the extent that these children were exposed to things that no kid should be seeing, especially by the means of their favorite cartoon. Something that should be innocent and should be kind of sacred in a way was desecrated and maimed and made disturbing, all for either shock value or depraved fetishistic reasoning. Within the Brony community in its early days, there was a lot of homophobia because bronies were often being called gay by the media, and a lot of these were insecure straight dudes. Or at least dudes who thought they were straight. So, being gay was looked at as a bad thing in the Brony community by some, especially considering that so many of them were edgy 4chan users. Now, in the later days of this community, this sentiment definitely wore off. But if you watch the infamous Brony documentary, you'll see a lot of this homophobia on display. I personally look back on my Brony days with a lot of fun. I had a great time, and I loved the show, I loved BronyCon, I loved all the fan art, and I loved the fandom. But it's undeniable that there were some incredibly messed up things that should never have appeared. And I just want to say to everyone who was affected by this content that I'm deeply sorry. And honestly, I wish things could be different. It's at the point now where many of the people who grew up on this content are young adults, and so can look back clearly, where at the time we didn't really realize what we were seeing and what sort of effect it could have on us. We were just little kids. But now looking back, there's a disturbing sense of realism when you see what you were exposed to, the type of content and its depravity, the individuals at play, and the realization that the Brony community was a much darker one than it appeared to be. Everything that we've just discussed is some truly insane stuff. But something I've noticed is that recently, a lot of people have been really into the MLP Grimdark stuff. And personally, the more and more I've looked into it, the more I've started to like it myself. So I wanted to do something really special for this video. You may or may not know this, but I'm in a band, and that band is named Polybius. We are the one and only cringecore band, which essentially means that we make music based on early 2010s internet culture, things commonly considered cringe. We got an EP about derpy hooves, we got a song about Fortnite, and so I thought it'd be really cool if Polybius put together a cover of the one and only Rainbow Factory. Enjoy.
Well, a rainbow's tale isn't quite as nice as the story we knew of sugar and spice, but a rainbow's easy once you get it with the help of the magic of a Pegasus device. Philosophy, far beyond that of clouds, tales, mythology. It's easy to misjudge that floating city with the lore and decor and social psychology, but with all great things comes a great responsibility. On building weather security, how you ask, am I up to the task? To which the answer is a simple facility. In the Rainbow Factory, where not a single soul gets through. In the Rainbow Factory, where fears and horrors come true. In the Rainbow Factory, where fears and horrors come true.
Not bad, right? But here's the thing, there's a lot more to discuss. So let's re-enter the discussion on Cupcakes as we delve into the Sins of Bronies. This is a video by the name of My Little Pony, Cupcakes Animated, posted by Ocarina Playa in 2011, which is pretty early in the fandom's life. The video features the pony Rainbow Dash being strapped down to an operating table and being cut open by a scalpel, her cutie mark being removed, while she screams in pain. Her friend Pinkie Pie joyfully laughs and jumps through the whole process, while continuing to butcher her friend. She nails her hooves to the table and then removes all of her intestines. At the end, we see a taxidermy Rainbow Dash with her cutie mark removed. This video got over 12 million views at the time of recording. That is a lot, and a lot of those views were indeed from young children. Now, if you read the comments, you're gonna see a lot of people recounting how traumatized they were by this content, and how much it scared them. But again, this was not the only Cupcakes video. Most of these videos do have warnings at the start of the videos, giving viewer discretion, which is something that all of these videos should have, but unfortunately, many do not. Another very iconic thing in the Brony fandom that terrified lots of kids was the LunaGame. The LunaGame was what seemed to just be an innocent little platforming game featuring the character Princess Luna that was posted on the Equestria Daily website. After just walking around a bit and platforming, you're met with two possible creepy images and a creepy distorted song in the background. And the thing is, you could not exit this game. The only way you could was to Control-Alt-Delete, which is pretty creepy, I can't lie. Once you went back to your home screen, you'd see that there were a ton of creepy pony pictures all over the game left, and a folder as well titled The End Is Nay, which sounds kinda goofy, but it genuinely scared a lot of people. Many thought that it was a computer virus, but after doing computer virus scans, it turns out it was just a joke. Brutally mean one, but still a joke nonetheless. Each of them were more scary than the last, and the graphics were of a higher quality. The jump scares were scarier, all that stuff. LunaGame was unknowingly seen by a lot of kids who got very freaked out by it, myself included. The fact that it froze your computer and added all these different files to your desktop really adds to the scariness of it, in my opinion. The concept of not being able to control your computer when seeing something terrifying is honestly kind of scary and is a good form of digital horror. It definitely wasn't the worst thing in the fandom. Now there's another Cupcakes video that has a lot of views as well. This one's uploaded by Pinkie Dan Pie on YouTube. This one, instead of featuring music, actually has a fan dubbing of the characters. So they're talking to each other through the whole thing, which to me makes it more disturbing. Just like the others, the animation is gratuitous and disgusting, and the violence is just over the top, made worse by how mean-spirited the interaction between the two characters is. I want to add these in just to kind of shed light to these animations, make it clear that Mr. Davie's video was not the only one. This fanfiction was huge in the fandom. People really adored it for whatever reason. In some ways, people believed that the character in the show really would be capable of committing such acts just given her crazy nature, which I believe is why this fanfiction was so popular. Adults loved it, edgy teens loved it, but kids loathed it. So many young children were deceived into watching these videos, because especially the one by Mr. Davie had a really bright and friendly thumbnail. And it starts off completely innocent too, and it barely even has a warning. But I'll get to that later. Another thing that was very prominent in the My Little Pony fandom was shipping. For those who don't know, that is the act of having two characters and writing stories, or simply imagining in your head that they are in a relationship together, hence the term shipping. Shipping is kind of controversial within fandom. I personally don't really care about it, but a lot of people do it, and every fandom has shipping in it. So, of course, a lot of the ponies were shipped together, which led to videos and art of exactly that. On YouTube, it was incredibly easy to find ponies making out. And usually they animated the saliva and made it more detailed than it really needed to be. In my opinion, some of these border on softcore pornography and are just weird to watch. I want to be clear that I don't think this content shouldn't exist or anything. People should be able to make whatever they want. But when it comes to making videos about a children's show on a platform like YouTube that is infested with children, without any warning that the content's going to be inappropriate, I feel like it's kind of irresponsible of the people making these videos. A lot of the videos were made either in the actual My Little Pony art style, or alternatively, using Source Filmmaker. Source Filmmaker is essentially an animation program that you can use that uses the Source engine. You're probably familiar with some Source games such as Team Fortress 2, Portal, or Half-Life, and you've more than likely seen Source film animations. People created My Little Pony models, and the rest was history. There were so many animations using these models, since doing 3D animation with Source was way easier than doing 2D animation by hand. But since it was easy to make, that led there to be a lot of really inappropriate content using these models and these characters. I remember accidentally stumbling upon a bunch of videos of ponies making out and getting all sensual with these models. The animation was often jagged and unprofessional, making the videos have a generally uncomfortable and kind of creepy aura in a sense, at least to a little me. Which if you couldn't tell already, the Brony fandom had a lot of really sexual themes to it. I don't know what it is, but to me it seems like whenever there are grown men in a fandom, they can't seem to be able to just like female characters that has to be sexual in some sort of way. Obviously not every grown man in any sense, but this is something I've seen in a lot of fandoms that, especially with cartoons that feature female characters. A lot of dudes can't seem to just like a character for what they are, which leads me to one channel that if you grew up with the My Little Pony fandom, you may be familiar with, Tiarawhy. Tiarawhy's first upload on the channel, as of 2023, is a video by the name of Cupcakes MLP, which is another iteration of the Cupcakes Creepypasta, obviously. However, this one is set to the song This Is Halloween, from the movie The Nightmare Before Christmas. This is Tiarawhy's first public animation, so the animation is more beginner level. However, that doesn't make it any less terrifying. Pinkie Pie poisons Rainbow Dash, and then we see her locked up on the operating table just like all these other iterations. Pinkie Pie enters wearing the face of a character from the show by the name of Gilda, who treated Pinkie Pie awfully. In these creepypastas, it was often depicted that Pinkie Pie killed her, and essentially got revenge. Eventually, like in everything else, she grabs a scalpel, removes the cutie mark, and we see the bloody corpse of Gilda in the background. There we go. Rainbow Dash's wings are hacked off, she's injected and then knocked out, and then unlike in the other ones, instead of her limbs being surgically removed and her gut being ripped open, instead she's set up to a machine that just pulls all her limbs off like she's a Lego figure or something. To a lot of people, this completely changed their viewpoint of the characters in the show. They couldn't enjoy Pinkie Pie in the way that they once did after seeing all of this content, and how disturbing it was. And honestly, the Nightmare Before Christmas song really adds to the horror factor of this video. So right away, Tiarawhy starts with a bang. Believe me, this was just the start. As we continue to take a look at Tiarawhy's channel, we'll see their first video that starts to delve into the NSFW territory. This one being Twilight Sparkle's special message for all her friends. The audio is actually of Tara Strong, Twilight Sparkle's voice actress, but not actually from My Little Pony. Instead, it's from a video game by the name of Lollipop Chainsaw, who is voiced by Tara Strong. The audio is suggestive in nature, and the way that it's animated implies exactly what you think it implies. The character in the video says, "Welcome to my bedroom. Don't think that me letting you in here is an invitation for any funny stuff. I mean, I don't have a problem with funny stuff." She then pulls out a ball gag and a nail. The implication is obvious, and I don't want to describe it. This video has 9.1 million views, and was recommended to so many people. I personally remember as a kid getting this video in my recommended all the time, seeing it and then not understanding it, seeing it again and still not understanding it, and so on and so forth. I really didn't get it until watching this video again today. I was an innocent young child, what can I say? As Tiarawhy made more and more animations, the animation style got closer and closer to the actual show. Now there's another video by the name of Flutters Gets Beeped in the Maze. This is a parody of an episode in which the ponies are all kind of like mind controlled by an enemy by the name of Discord. The video features techno music with Fluttershy saying beep over and over again and bouncing up and down. As the video goes on, she starts to bounce up and down faster, and the animation gets more sporadic, until this happens.
Oh my.
And then she gets mind controlled again. I did not understand this as a small child. I saw it many times, but I did not understand it. Yeah, it's bad. The top comment says, "This walked so Anka Zone could run," and that is absolutely true. Once you see it, you really cannot unsee it. What makes it worse is the fact that she's not willingly doing this and is being mind controlled, and then gets mind controlled again at the end. I also want to note that literally none of the videos I've talked about so far have been age restricted. They never were, and they still haven't been. Again, I'm not one for age restricting content. I don't think it's a good thing, for most occasions. This is one where I feel maybe age restriction isn't the worst thing in the world. One of Tiarawhy's most famous videos is one by the name of My Little Pony, Friendship Was Magic. This one features the character Twilight Sparkle in a near-death experience. She's blown out of a window and is falling to her death, and eventually flashes back and remembers her life. At the last second though, she is saved. This whole video is a reference to the show Cowboy Bebop, and was another that was just really hot in the YouTube algorithm. However, I don't really have much to say about it. There is blood in it, but it's really not that bad. I saw it as a kid, it wasn't anything terrible. But Tiarawhy continued to make more and more videos with some pretty unfortunate themes. Like, for example, Dueling Magic, Let's Fighting Love. This video features two ponies about to fight, who then end up kissing with tongue and saliva. They then seem to like fall in love. And then we're shown this, which is interrupted, and it says, "Can't show you that on YouTube." And it's likely making fun of clopping and cloppers. There's a video by the name of Spike x Twilight 2, which is a shipping between the characters Spike and Twilight. Spike being a baby dragon that's basically Twilight Sparkle's like kid or little brother. That's kind of what their dynamic is. This video features him staring at her ass and then thinking about it, and eventually strapping on a glove, and then, yeah. This one just feels unnecessary. All these videos are comedic in nature. They aren't straight up NSFW, but they're just so suggestive and kind of nasty. It makes them pretty uncomfortable to watch. Tiarawhy is an incredible animator. Like, the more these videos went on, the more and more they looked like the actual show. To me, it's unfortunate that such great artists use their talent on content like this, that is easily viewable by a child. There's another video by the name of My Little Paradox. This one's on a play of an episode on My Little Pony that deals with time travel. The time travel episode alone was a total mindfuck in a lot of ways, and honestly, it gave me like an existential crisis when I was a little kid in a way. Because essentially in the episode, the main character is visited by a future self who looks all beat up and is trying to warn her about the future, so she does everything she can to prevent that happening. However, all of her preventative measures end up resulting in that exact future, which like, if you think about it, shit's deep. But anyway, this animation is a play on that plot. However, when going back in time, the time travel machine burns half of Twilight's past self into a skeleton. Then her other self gorily falls apart while blood seeps over the floor. We then see Twilight Sparkle and Pinkie Pie digging a grave for this past pony. Twilight then seemingly kills Pinkie Pie with the corpse, and then they're both buried there. In a little like post-credit subscribe scene, you can see her climbing back out though. There's one video that I really remember from this channel, that I saw a lot as a kid, and really did not understand. Now, for some context, Bronies really love taking background characters from the show and giving them personalities and giving them lives outside of the show itself. It was really fun, and honestly, it was a really cool part of the community. The most famous example of this is Derpy Hooves, a character who is a gray pony with derpy eyes. Came from an animation error, but people fell in love with her. And then she became the fan favorite, including me. When I was a little kid, I was in love with Derpy Hooves, and she was just the best. So there was one episode where there is this little brown pony who's playing a video game. Since a lot of bronies were also gamers, obviously, they took this character and they called him Button Mash. Button Mash was given a whole story, lore, a family, and character traits. And people absolutely adored him, including myself. There was a YouTube channel by the name of Jan Animation Studios, who really brought the character to life. He made a bunch of different little shorts featuring Button Mash and his mom. And they were super cute and super fun. I personally love them. Especially the Pony parody of the Minecraft parody of the song Last Friday Night, Don't Mine at Night, which, let me tell you, I don't know if anyone in the audience relates to this, but this was the hardest music video ever. The song went super hard, but the visuals themselves were just the coolest thing ever. I'd get chills watching this, I can't even lie. So I really loved Button Mash, and I loved everything that had to do with it. He was a little gamer boy just like me. But there was this weird obsession with his mom. A lot of people in the community just basically decided that this was the sexy pony. Like, sexier than the other ponies. She was like the sexiest pony. Despite kind of just looking like all the other... Look, I don't really get it, and I'm not gonna question it. Tiarawhy made some videos about Button's mom, who was named CreamHeart, and the one that I remember seeing quite a lot was Pokemare Finds a Joystick. This video featured Button's mom looking for something. She then finds a Wii remote and says, "A bit bigger, but that shouldn't be a problem." We then see Button Mash entering through the door, asking if she's seen his controller. Through this, she is vibrating. She stops, he looks over, and he turns into stone. Yeah, I didn't get the joke. I'm gonna be real here, I did not understand what was happening. But again, this was something that was recommended to me over and over and over again. But it always just made me confused. Like, what was she doing with that vibrating Wii remote? If you're watching this video, I don't think I have to explain. If you don't understand it, then click off, because you're probably too young to be watching this in the first place. This was just one of many animations sexualizing this CreamHeart character. Google image searching for My Little Pony was a really dangerous sort of thing. Let me explain. When searching up any My Little Pony character, whether it be just for looking at art of them, or wanting to have reference to draw them, if you scrolled far enough on Google Images, keep in mind with safe search on, you would encounter not safe for work content. Like, every time. It was almost impossible to escape. So when I was looking at pictures of Button Mash, I found pictures of CreamHeart. Not safe for work pictures of CreamHeart. And a lot of them were really explicit. Today we've got a rather unique context for everything, because some people who feel their lives were changed by the Brony community in a negative way came out and wanted to speak on their experience on the subject, and how it really truly affected them. The woman in the interview here does not want to show her real name. However, she wants to appear as Lillith.
I got into a lot of American shows a lot later. Like, you know how My Little Pony is like usually for 6-year-olds or something? Like, I was into it really late. Yeah, and I also had this tablet, and because my parents were immigrants, it was like they didn't understand how social media worked in America. So I had a lot of internet and I wasn't supervised with it. I was into a lot of My Little Pony, obviously, and I would just like go on YouTube because I didn't know any other streaming service, to be honest. Like, we didn't have cable. It's not as popular anymore, but there used to be like a lot of kissing videos of like ponies kissing. It was really gross, and it's like usually the same person who's making it, but it was like this 3D character. It was like Applejack or like, you know, I forgot the other one, the Rainbow Dash girl. Yeah, it was like usually them or something kissing, and I would just watch a lot of those, and it progressed into a lot more. It just got grosser, you know, like it got a lot grosser. It went from kissing to actual, and I didn't know what it was like, but I kept watching it because it was like My Little Pony, you know. And then what happened with that is that it ended up like physically and mentally changing the way my body and mind worked. Like I lost a lot of, I don't know how to word it, I lost a lot of abilities. But I'm not interested in like ponies or horses or animals like that. But it just changed how my body worked, or how it was supposed to work. And I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but you know, it could have been a lot differently for me if I just didn't watch those videos. And mentally, like, it became like an addiction, and it wasn't just ponies anymore. It was just like everything I could watch, you know. It was like a really bad porn addiction, and it was like in 6th grade. Like, I was young as hell, and I was not too educated on it. I still don't completely understand why people do it, but that led me to a lot more worse websites. And yeah, I started actively seeking it out. Like, I would purposely go search it up, and I would go on. It wasn't just YouTube anymore. It was like websites that specifically would upload these type of videos. And it wasn't just like pony videos, like everything you could watch, you know. I don't want to go into too much detail about this either, but I did end up going to a hospital for a couple months because of how bad my mental health was. And I'm not saying that it was the cause of why I was in there, but it definitely had like an impact on me. And what's crazy is at the time, I didn't know how to write English because I was like new to America, but these videos would just still pop up. Like I would try my best to spell pony. I didn't know it. But after that, like the videos started declining. Like people weren't watching those videos as much. And then it was like gore, like people would post gore of it. And actually one of my friends showed me it and I ended up watching a lot of that too. Yeah, my friend was addicted to it too. She was addicted to gore and she showed me it. But I kind of mostly went towards like the porn, but I also like would watch a lot of the gore too. Yeah, that ended up being really bad for me too because I had a lot of nightmares and it just affected me really badly, especially like mentally. It kind of left me a lot more protective of my little sister. I don't let her on Discord. I don't let her on like any social media that could. I think that's good.
She wasn't the only one who came out and shared her experience. This man here goes by Cuhslim, and he also shared his story.
Just like Lillith, I was also like an immigrant. I came over to America in 2016, and like with my parents, we didn't have so much knowledge on American type stuff. And I grew up with YouTube over time. And with that time going on, I don't know how, but I stumbled upon gory stuff, usually on YouTube. And it like clung on to my childhood growing up. And I don't know what clicked in, but I seen it like so frequently. I thought it was normal, especially with My Little Pony. Like I never even started actually seeing the show at first, and I was disgusted. But like it would pop up so frequently, I thought, oh, maybe this is the show itself. And I started searching it up myself even, and I saw it was the complete opposite. So I was confused, but I don't know what happened. I never questioned it. For some reason, My Little Pony was included in that. And they did scar me for, I think, months on end since I seen them. I never had anybody to talk to about them. Like, I couldn't just go to anybody and be like, oh, have you guys ever seen, like, you know, these little ponies on YouTube, whatever, fighting and, like, they beheading each other and stuff like that? I wouldn't seem like a normal kid. So to seem normal, I always kept it to myself. But I knew myself, like it was destroying me. I couldn't sleep at night sometimes because of the things that I would consume on YouTube. I've consumed so much gore media. I don't know what it was, but as traumatizing as it was, I couldn't feel myself like able to get away from it. I've always consumed and even went out of my way to go find these. It was sick-minded. I probably shouldn't have done it, but I didn't know any better. But I ended up doing it because I simply just couldn't get away from it. I've seen what it actually was compared to the things I've seen first about it. I did actually even start watching the show because I did like it. But then I started questioning, but if this is what the show is, why do people do gory stuff with it or fetishize it sexually? Like, even from now watching your video with the things, I remember like a huge majority of those things. I remember seeing those.
It truly is deeply, deeply saddening and unfortunate to see the effects that this type of content had on children. Children who really didn't know any better and just wanted to see stuff about their favorite pony show. This video is made for people who went through something like that. I want to give people a sense of closure. Initially, I thought, like many things, that the effects of seeing this content was bad, but not as bad as it really ended up being. Just want to warn you now that we're going to be discussing the real world effects on the brain that ingesting NSFW content, especially as a child, can have on you. A National Institute of Justice study from 2016 claims that exposure to violence at a young age has long-lasting effects on the brain. Exposure to violence can harm a child's emotional, psychological, and allegedly even physical development. Now, obviously, not all violence is the same. Seeing gory pony videos and actual shock snuff videos on the internet are two very different things, but it should still be noted. Lots of children who are exposed to these kind of things at a young age are likely to have more difficulty in school or even cope with their trauma with things like drugs and alcohol. Something that's debatably even worse is the effects of porn to a young child. Now, in the internet age, so many little kids are exposed to really, really not safe for work content, especially during the Brony era when it was almost impossible to escape. A study from the Australian government claims that pornography really bends and shapes the way that young people view sex and sexuality in a whole lot of different ways. Some effects can be more minor, like a sense of feeling like one's body is not good enough, since the depictions in NSFW content online are all very fake and a lot unachievable in real life. But it also leads to much worse things. Exposure to lots of porn can and will influence a young person's interpretation about sex and how it should be. It could lead them to also become hypersexual, which is something that happened to quite a lot of the people who are in the Brony community as kids. It kind of heavily encourages unsafe sex, and the thing about porn is that it kind of trains your brain in a lot of ways. Before everyone in the comments starts complaining, I just want to be clear that I don't think like porn shouldn't exist or something like that, but I do think that children should not be watching it. And I think that's something that we should all agree with. Whether or not you did as a kid should be irrelevant. Just because you did doesn't mean everyone else should. A lot of boys who grew up on porn tended to view women in ways that aren't exactly the best. A lot of the interpretation kind of sees women as sex objects, because that's kind of how their brain is linked to see people. Porn in a lot of ways is like a carrot on a stick. People are constantly chasing that high. You know, people start off seeing just plain nudity, and that was the most incredible thing. But for a lot of people, that thrill can only last so long. They move on to bigger and more stimulating things, which often leads to more hardcore stuff, which turns into violence and non-consensual things, and unfortunately leads some to seek out younger looking models as well. But that's a discussion for a different video. My point is, it should be clear to you all now that exposing children to NSFW content is not okay, under any circumstances. And it was a cardinal sin that Bronies committed over and over and over again. And the thing is too, it was only really the bad eggs. There were so many nice and kind and genuine people in the Brony community. So many wonderful souls that found a place in this wholesome kids show and wanted to celebrate it. And those people did nothing wrong. When I refer to Bronies, I am in no way referring to them. I am only referring to the people who offended in these ways. But the wider Brony community was innocent. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm glad that I was a part of it. I made so many great memories at the Brony cons. I was able to watch the show with my friends and play with the figures and have that enjoyment and that excitement with thousands of people on the internet. It was a really special thing, and you don't really see that with a lot of things. But some people just had to ruin it. It'd be one thing if this content existed, but it wasn't as widespread as it is. But no, it's very, very, very widespread. And honestly, a lot of this has to do with the YouTube algorithm, especially how it was back in like 2012 to 2015. So many of these really disturbing My Little Pony animations were heavily pushed to kids who were just watching clips of the actual TV show, simply because the titles had My Little Pony included, they weren't age restricted, so children were outright shown that stuff. Obviously, this is not the child's fault. However, it is the fault of the parent, but only to a certain extent. If you look at all of these videos, their thumbnails and titles are completely innocent. They just look like clips of My Little Pony. It's really easy to just be like, oh, it's completely the parent's fault, the Bronies did nothing wrong. However, let's take a look at that argument more. Let's say you're a parent in like 2014, 2013. You are monitoring what your kid watches. You go through their search history, you ask them about what they see, and you're trying to stay on top of things, but you don't really understand how YouTube works that much, but you're trying your best. So you go through their search history, you try to see what they're watching. And you know your kid's a fan of My Little Pony. You see them watch it on the TV, so you're familiar with it. You see a bunch of videos of My Little Pony characters, and, well, it seems completely innocent. Why would you have to worry? Now, obviously, a lot of people straight up had parents that just did not check their search history, did not monitor them at all, and that's not a good thing. That's not good parenting. I don't want to tell people how to parent, but that's not how you do it. Let me just say that. The internet is an incredibly dangerous place, and YouTube is too. No matter how large of a corporation it is, no matter how safe they seem to claim they are, it really is not, and it never really will be, and that's okay, because, quite frankly, it's not a place for children. I've seen a lot of people strangely defend these Bronies and the content that they made, and it's kind of perplexed me in a lot of ways, so I've tried to understand their arguments, but honestly, every one of them just falls flat. Something that lots of people bring up is that these videos did have warnings, so let's take a look at said warnings, why don't we? Lil Miss Rarity? Nope, no warnings. Pony sliding into boxes, no warnings. Rainbow Factory, no warnings. The cider inflation video, no warnings. Google image searching, obviously had no warnings. But what about Mr. Davie? He had warnings, didn't he? Well, let's take a look at those. Cupcakes, for example. There is a warning screen, but if you read it, it's not exactly what you should be seeing. Quote, warning, the following content may cause arousal, hunger, erection, thirst, wetness, NRB, hardened nipples, crotch pain, splooge, testicular anxiety, and uncontrollable excitation. What a great warning. That'll really dissuade kids from watching the video. There's nothing in the description warning kids to stay away. Instead, it's actually legal information. It's Mr. Davie's attorney. just in case Hasbro decides to take down the video or sue him. All the information is right there, public on YouTube. What's crazy too is that YouTube has these little suggested features. After watching a video, they'll suggest you something to watch next. And what comes next? Oh, it's an actual just episode of My Little Pony uploaded by the official channel. Wonderful. What about his video Derpy Gets Pranked? Oh, yeah, wait, no warnings. What about the big one? Smile HD, huh? So, let's take a look at this warning. There is one, and it reads, "Warning, the following content may cause smiles, tears, face strains, confusion, seizures, breathing difficulties, disorientation, involuntary limb spasms, severe chair dancing, and an elevated sense of happiness. Please consult with a health physician before watching. The following content is rated M for Magnificent, and should be only watched by everybody in the entire universe." Yes, it's that awesome. So to everyone who argues that Mr. Davie's videos did have warnings, that it's the kids' faults for watching them, what is your argument now? Genuinely. These warnings are completely insufficient. Not only are they hard to read and they go by quickly, but they are not sufficient in the slightest. They're completely just jokes. Hell, Smile HD, as you can see, tells you that you should watch it and that it'll make you happy. I generally do find it really strange that Bronies will try and defend this content even though they really do not have to. I mean, they've got no reason to. They can just admit that it was not good and shouldn't have been watched by kids, but instead they still try to argue in favor of it. And there's really no argument that they can make to justify it. The Brony fandom in general just had this general aura of sexual content. A video that immediately comes to mind that I loved as a kid and didn't completely understand was the Derpy Nyan Nyan dance. The video is genuinely adorable and features Derpy singing the titular Nyan Nyan song from a Japanese commercial. Watching this video now to make this video, it makes me happy. I loved this thing as a kid. I tried to remake it myself by drawing it frame by frame on a bunch of different sheets of paper. It didn't work, but I tried. But then here's the thing. In the video, we see the character Dr. Hooves enter. This is a character that was often shipped with Derpy Hooves. He questions why she's recording herself, and then we see that the camera's pointed at the bed with a little note that says reserved for Doctor, with a little heart next to it, and then she's giving like a flirty face to him. He's confused, she's embarrassed, and then they hug. But it's like, why did that have to be there? Genuinely, it could have just been like this cute, sweet animation. Why did they have to imply that she was trying to film a sex tape? Because that's what they were doing there. I didn't get it as a kid. I only get it now, especially because all the comments very, very directly say it. But yeah, it was just weird. There was so much content that was unnecessarily sexual, and it really was everywhere. My Little Pony unfortunately had a lot of really, really disturbing fan fictions. There was one really, really awful and depraved one by the name of the Sweet Apple Massacre. Sweet Apple Massacre is a Grimdark fanfiction about the character Big Macintosh, who is a very well-mannered and kind character in the show. In this story, he brutally tortures, and I really don't want to describe it much because it's a really, really disgusting and awful story. It's purely just shock and genuinely disgusting. I avoided it as a kid because I'd heard awful things about it, so I just didn't even want to hear it. But for this video, I had to listen to a recording of it, and it made me lose my appetite, I'll say that. It's genuinely so disgusting and so depraved in every way, and just encapsulated the worst parts of the My Little Pony community. Not only was it violent, but it was also pedophilic, among really just all the worst things in the world. Do not research this. I'm warning you now. It's not worth it. Just take my word on it. It's disgusting. It's awful. It really isn't worth it. You know, the thing is as well, many young kids were exposed to this story, and it absolutely traumatized them, and for good reason. People really wanted me to cover it here, and so here it is. If you haven't seen it, or you haven't read it or listened to it, just do not look it up. It's not worth it. At all. It's just awful, disgusting shock content. At BronyCon, there were children who would reference these fanfictions to the voice actresses that played the characters. I remember being at BronyCon. They had this thing where it was basically a kids exclusive little room called something like Derpy's Clubhouse or Derpy's Treehouse or something. And there were child exclusive events that the voice actors would actually go to, and you could get free autographs, and it was awesome, really. And there was one featuring Nicole Oliver, who plays the character of Princess Celestia. Some of you may already see where this is going. Now, there was a little kid at this panel, probably like 8 or 9. There was a child in this audience that referenced the video, Friendship is Magic Bitch, which featured the character, Princess Celestia, who Nicole Oliver plays, asking a bunch of different people whether or not they like bananas, and then calling them a bitch, and then sending them to the moon. It's weird brony stuff. Now the kid asked Nicole Oliver, do you like bananas, in the same kind of way as the video, and she got upset. She stood up and started telling parents to make sure they knew what their kids were watching, because there was so much disturbing stuff out there. And the video is not for kids. There's cursing, it's like raunchy, but you know, it's not the worst thing in the world. But she had a point. A lot of these parents had no idea what this was. They didn't know what the kids were referencing or anything like that, which reminds me of another time that Nicole Oliver was at a panel, and she was asked about Princess Molestia, which was a fan fiction made about the character. And honestly, I don't want to explain it, but the name will tell you enough. Princess Molestia. Clearly, these voice actresses do not like being asked about this stuff, and they do not like children being exposed to it. So many were, and it's sad that they were aware of it, and they knew it was happening, but there was really nothing they could do about it other than warn parents in person. Princess Molestia was a thing that was all over the internet. I didn't know what it meant, I didn't know what it was as a kid, but I remember seeing it. It's a really long fan fiction people are obsessed with for whatever reason. And there's a ton of art about it, there's a bunch of fan dubs of it, readings of it on YouTube, you name it. It's there. The Sins of Bronies were more than most people thought. I'm not anti-brony, I don't hate this community, but I feel that someone needs to talk about it. I feel like most people who were doing the kind of content weren't aware of the effects that it would have on kids. At least that's what's gonna help me sleep at night. Because if they were, and they knew what they were doing, that just makes it so much worse. So to everyone who was traumatized by this content, I am so sorry. And I hope that this kind of helped bring you some closure. If you are in therapy, talk to your therapist about this kind of stuff and how it may have had an effect on you. They could help way more than I could ever. There is kind of a support group now. People are talking about it and realizing what happened. Hell, even bronies who were there at the time are realizing how messed up everything was. And I think that's a good thing. The more discussion, the better. But yeah, the internet is not a safe place. And I'm very sorry to everyone who was exposed to everything like this. I hope that you will take action to help protect other kids that you know, and make sure that they don't stumble upon this kind of stuff. If you're someone who experienced these sort of things as a kid, I encourage you to spread the word, because we can prevent things like this happening in the future. As long as there's awareness, and parents of today know what happened, they can prevent their children from being exposed to all these terrible things. It may not be bronies anymore, now we're dealing with Elsagate, which is a really bad issue on its own. But the more support we've got, the better. And I believe that together, we can raise that support. But it doesn't end here. According to some anecdotal testimony online, an infamous My Little Pony NSFW game was found on children's websites that hosted flash games. This game was called Banned from Equestria, or Banned from Equestria Daily. This game had you play as this red stallion guy. You'd go around Equestria and befriend the My Little Ponies. And then engage in intercourse with them, some instances being more consensual than others, with many of these animations getting really rough and disturbing. The game is really well animated, unfortunately, and at least in my opinion, this shit's kinda sickening. So much to the point that a lot of bronies of the time were disgusted and disturbed by it, and felt it went too far in a lot of places. I've watched parts of a censored playthrough for this, and even that was nauseating. Call me a pearl-clutching Puritan all you want, I'll be waiting. If it is indeed true that children were exposed to this on a child-friendly website, then that is horrible, and I'm sorry that it happened. If you're gonna make a game like this, it's one thing, but when it gets to the point like this game, it gets rough and violent, I think that's too far. Personally, in my opinion. Something that's absolutely fascinating to me is the way that Mr. Davie-style Cupcakes parodies have shown up in recent times. They carry the same naming conventions as Cupcakes, the name usually related to what pony is, doing the murdering. For example, Rainbow's HD is essentially Cupcakes, but reversed. Instead of Pinkie Pie killing Rainbow Dash to make her into Cupcakes, Rainbow Dash uses Pinkie's blood for rainbows, which also is a cool nod to Rainbow Factory. Most of these videos are uploaded by different people, so the animation style and aesthetics are different in every one, really making it a fascinating trend. Almost every character has their own iteration, like Dresses HD, featuring Rarity using Applejack's body to make a dress, Muffins HD, featuring Derpy stabbing Dr. Hooves, with her reasoning being a meta take on the trend, Apple of My Eye, which is actually a subversion of the trend, in which there is no blood or violence, but still, a warning at the beginning. Warning the viewer that this animation features detailed portrayal of two ponies violently killing each other. Diamonds HD, actually being an incredibly gory video of the child characters decimating their bully, the main one of them then betraying her two friends at the end. You get it. There's a lot of these, and it's kind of wild, but unlike the Mr. Davie one, these ones actually have very clear and concise warnings before them. which is a good thing, and it's pretty cool to see this resurgence of content that emulates the early 2010s. Of course, part of me worries for Gen Alpha kids who are interested in My Little Pony. Could they be finding these videos and experiencing the same fright as many people in my generation unfortunately have? Judging by the comments, it doesn't seem to be too many young people, just judging by what they're saying and the way that they type. Most commenters are talking about how accurate the videos are to those of the time, which I have to agree with. I really wouldn't be surprised if sometime soon, MLP Grimdark makes more of a mainstream return. It goes without saying that the Brony community is one of a lot of controversy and absurdities. Of course, the jar story, as we discussed prior, is probably the most iconic and well-known example, but another one that was a little more obscure, but still pretty shocking, was the story of the Pinkie Pie Tulpa. Now, I don't think I'm personally fully adept to tell you what the hell a Tulpa actually is, but I know someone who absolutely is. Give a warm welcome to the one and only Wizard of Weird, Lionel Kentler.
Welcome to the Wizard of Weird.
Salutations! I am the Wizard of Weird! Do you know what a tulpa is?
No, I don't.
A tulpa is essentially a being that some believe you can manifest in your mind and then will into reality through complete and utter willpower. These tulpas are claimed to be fully sentient and able to interact with you in the same ways that a person could. This method is said to have been practiced by Tibetan monks throughout history, but it wasn't really known until a thread discussing it on 4chan's paranormal board X appeared. And from there, people started to try to create tulpas of their own based on the methods of the monks. To simplify it, tulpamancy is basically a really hardcore form of manifestation and visualization. The tulpamancer will spend tens of hours visualizing every single detail about the creature they aim to bring to life. When creating a tulpa, you're essentially creating a separate consciousness in your own brain. Every little thing needs to be accounted for and visualized for your tulpa to turn out how you want. A fully developed tulpa is said to be able to be touched, smelled, heard, and even seen. Of course, they aren't physically there, but some claim that you can interact with them as though they're right in front of you, as sort of a self-induced hallucination. I don't know, man, this shit is wild. Many users of 4chan claim to have created these entities, essentially giving themselves full-blown imaginary friends in adulthood. Eventually, a thread on the MLP board turns to the topic of tulpas. Then, an entire tulpa thread was created on the MLP board, and the stories we get from there are just absurd. One of which in particular has garnered lots of infamy, and is probably the most famous example of a tulpa gone wrong.
Excuse me, I am the Wizard of Weird! Do you know what a tulpa is?
No, I don't.
With that, I've been Lionel Kentler, and now that you know what a tulpa is, prepare to enjoy the horrifying story of the Pinkie Pie Tulpa.
Creating Pinkie Pie Tulpa. Do it before going to bed every night. Ignore warnings about doing exactly that, because it can take ideas from your dreams. 60 hours in, I've started seeing and hearing her. Her face is deformed as fuck and frightening, and I can't change it. She just keeps yelling for no f***ing reason. Mostly when someone else is talking to me. Can't hear shit when she does. My face went. Please f***ing help me.
Ignore it. She will disappear. Retry. Don't ignore warnings, idiot.
Jackie Chan Tulpa. And if you must get rid of him, Chuck Norris Tulpa. And when you must get rid of that, Bruce Lee Tulpa. And when you must get rid of that, you are screwed. Best of luck.
I can't hear shit. Jesus Christ, what do I do? Every time I try to form a f***ing thought, she's screaming no matter what I say. Her voice is all broken and nonsensical, like a newborn baby's. Doesn't it take weeks of ignoring to stop this?
How deformed, OP?
Hey OP, you know she's right behind you, right? Staring at you, waiting?
Fuck. Why did I even try this? You know when you smudge a picture of someone's face? It's like her features are there, but they are out of focus. And she has no fucking color in her eyes. I don't understand. I spent 30 hours on visualization, like this picture.
We warned you about tulpas. They say we're trolling, but we warned you.
Keep trying to ignore her, and keep telling yourself she can't harm you. It helps sometimes.
I know she can't hurt me in the slightest. This is fucking terrible. I should not have messed around with this. I knew this fear I had would happen as well. I thought about it every time I forced. I don't think I can sleep. Every time there is a silent moment, she uses it to make the loudest fucking noise possible. I have tried doing above, and threatening that I will ignore her. No change at all.
Wait, did you say her eyes have no color? You're my friend. She doesn't understand anything you're saying or thinking. She's essentially deaf. That's why she screams/makes loud noises.
Wow, holy shit. You're in some hardcore shit, OP. I don't understand why you couldn't just stop at watching a girl's cartoon instead of going this far. You kinda deserve it. Get a therapist. Get rid of it as fast as possible. I would go insane and ultimately commit suicide if I was in this situation. Facing inner demons. Hardcore mode.
It's like he's living in a Silent Hill game. Why don't you try playing loud music so you can try to forget her, OP?
I'm doing that now with MLP movie. Wouldn't you fucking know it? Maybe if I watch Pinkie Pie from the show, it will influence my Tulpa. It's not just the screaming in the face either. It's the touch. Cold breezes on my neck. Even when I put my hand around it, covering my neck, it still feels exactly the same. Prodding feeling on my right arm. There's a wall to my left that I lean on. The feeling of someone pulling my arm, neck, and chin hairs out. Nail pinching. The only sense I didn't work on was smell, so there isn't any. It takes hours and hours to make the sense real. It doesn't just pop up. No, I won't. It's still just a hallucination, and I realized I'm still referring to it as a sentient being, which I am stopping right now. Fuck's sake, why would she do this? 20-ish hours on personality. How could it turn out is just a fucking screaming banshee? Could it be anything to do with my medication? I'm on fluoxetine.
This might actually be a good thing, OP. She could be a manifestation of your depression and anxiety. This could be a chance for you to cast away those problems for good. All you need to do is figure out how to tell a deaf Tulpa pony to go away.
Just make a Jackie Chan Tulpa. It can't go wrong unless you're absolutely autistic.
Okay, now she's just staring at me with like split-second screams that last less than a second. The constant screams have stopped, and I don't know if this is better or worse, and I'm getting an awfully loud ringing in my head. What the fuck? She just moves backwards with no motion, except when she's screaming. I don't fucking understand. I gave her visual animation. I visualized for over 20 hours of her moving each limb.
The deaf thing seemed like as good as anything to fixate on. Try forcing anatomy. Imagine eyes for her, then force them onto her anatomy. Do the same with the bones, heart, liver, lungs, inner ear bullshit, everything. There are some reports of these solving issues with Tulpa who aren't working properly physically. Did this shit just start up after imposition? Does she seem actively malicious, or is she just crazy annoying unintentionally? Did she talk to you non-verbally at any point during creation up till now? I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt on being full of shit, because the situation's extremely interesting if it's real.
No change. The face is static. It's just a big fucking mess. And she moves what looks to be her mouth when she continually screams. These short screams are even fucking worse. No movement. Yes, I can't even hardly fucking ignore her, because every time I try to, the screaming snaps me back into her thoughts, like someone grabbing your head and turning it towards them.
Holy shit, OP. This is worse than most creepypasta I've read. I almost feel for you.
Trying. I'm fucking trying. Are you sure Tulpas can't directly interact with my senses? Because I'm getting a lot of ringing in my head and shit. Since it started, I can't form words properly when writing. Keep getting shit misspelled. Keep writing completely different words. Is it because I'm panicking?
Hell yes, Tulpas can interfere with your senses. That's the whole point of imposition. Your physical actions? No. And yeah, a lot of it is because you're panicking. The dude talking about bad trips has it right. Calm is the most important thing for dealing with any kind of weird psychological stuff. If you don't calm down, you're not going to be able to find a solution because your mind will just loop in physical fight or flight mode. And you can't run or fight psychological stuff physically. The panic is why you hear about dudes freaking their shit and themselves when they're on shrooms or LSD.
No. I've had problems of thoughts getting the bring of mine. That's why I suffered from nightmares and shit. How the f do I calm down when it won't stop f***ing making noise and blocking my view? I'm trying the mantra thing someone mentioned above. It's a pulsating scream. If I try to force it off, it starts doing it constantly, like a warning siren. As of now, it's in and out of my vision, like when you're moving your hand in front of your face and it goes black.
Hug the ever-loving shit out of a pillow. Cry like a bitch if you need to. People say it makes you feel better. Try getting her to come cuddle with you. I know it scares the shit out of you, but she's probably scared too. Being a part of your mind while you're panicking is probably scary as shit. Maybe you can comfort each other. That seems to kind of be the point of Tulpa. What is she doing other than screaming? We need information if we're to have any hope of helping out. And I know you're freaking out, but you are giving very little other than the creepiest original content I've seen in a while.
OP? Please come back, OP. We miss you replacing words with similar ones.
2012. Being afraid of no ghost. Not knowing who to call. Diggity.
OP is dead?
Most likely.
OP really dead, huh? That's a damn shame.
It's so over. She won. Truly an insane story. But it wasn't the only Brony Tulpa incident to be documented on 4chan. But listen, I think we've talked enough about pony tulpas. If you want to research it yourself, go ahead. It's fascinating, to say the very least. Something that I was personally invested in when I was young was My Little Pony Creepypasta. As we've discussed at length in this video, the Brony community came up with tons of horrific My Little Pony stories. Some better than others. But there are some that have always really stood out to me personally that I still revisit from time to time. One of my favorites is a creepypasta called Why I Stopped Watching My Little Pony. This story was told from the perspective of a concerned mother writing an email to Hasbro to complain about the current state of the show. She explains that at first, everything was okay, her only problem being that she couldn't find any MLP merchandise anywhere. However, her daughter found a battered Twilight Sparkle vinyl figure. One of the wings was ripped off, and her eyes were blacked out with a marker. Not only that, but the figure had the strangest creepy smile on her face. The mother explains that she felt as though this figure emanated hatred. She then explains that
she took it with her for a sleepover with her friend Amelia at her house a few weeks ago. I'm not sure what happened, but my daughter can't come over there anymore. I don't know everything that went on that night, and from what little I do know, it has something to do with Jennifer loaning her Twilight Sparkle doll to her friend Alicia when she went to bed, and something happened with her and the toy during the night. It's silly, I know, but the thing is, Jennifer has told me she hasn't been to school since the sleepover. Something about all she does is now scream nowadays, and had to be placed in a hospital. I don't understand what happened, and I'm a little frightened of it.
she explains that My Little Pony is inexplicably playing on TV 24/7, leading her to unplug the cable box because the new episodes that have been airing are incredibly inappropriate. She explains that
what's really upsetting is how the new episodes are going. Hasbro, I don't know what's wrong with you or the company that makes these shows, but they're downright evil. Only a twisted person would make something like this and like it. I thought it was strange that it was on all the time, but I didn't mind it. That'll change with Season 3, Episode 14, Flutter Pet, the one where Fluttershy's pet rabbit Angel gets sick and has to be put down. That was a horrible episode, which I didn't like how all the other ponies laughed at Fluttershy and called her names for letting Angel get sick. They kept on until Fluttershy had a breakdown and started crying, while all the other ponies gleefully ripped the poor bunny Angel apart.
these episodes continue to get more and more disturbing and gory, till an episode aired where Twilight tries to fly with her new wings, but gets torn apart and thrown off a cliff by her friends. Every future episode, Twilight is missing a wing, and her neck is always at a weird angle. This ended up perfectly mirroring her daughter's toy. She then gets an email back from Hasbro, explaining that they aren't airing, and haven't aired a My Little Pony show, and that they have no idea what the hell she's talking about. When responding to that message, she mentions hearing the show coming on in the background, and then the story ends. The ending is a little bit of an average creepypasta style ending, but I've always found the story captivating for what it doesn't tell you. What was this woman watching? Where did the toy come from? What did it do to the daughter's friend? Of course, it's not anything that could feasibly happen in real life, but regardless, it plays on that same kind of feeling of an extreme Mandela effect, and elicits similar feelings to something like the creepypasta Candle Cove. A creepypasta game that was also pretty iconic was The Story of the Blanks. This game followed the child character Applebloom, following Twilight Sparkle into the Everfree Forest, which was a location in the show that was shrouded in a lot of mystery, and considered to be somewhat dangerous. In the game, Applebloom and Twilight get separated after Applebloom follows a strange-looking pony. Applebloom then traverses the forest, and comes upon a weird little community by the name of Sunnytown. None of the ponies who live in Sunnytown have cutie marks, you know, the little tattoo that the ponies get on their butts, which appears when they discover their special talent. All the ponies in the forest act really strangely. Since it's a game, you need to solve a couple of puzzles, which then leads you to finding a key, which you use to open an abandoned shack. In said shack, Applebloom discovers the corpse of a pony in the fireplace. Applebloom starts to panic, and among running away, the entire town becomes dark and creepy. While trying to flee, zombie ponies start rising from the dead. As you soon discover, these ponies believe that the cutie marks were a curse, and that girl that you found in the fireplace ended up getting her cutie mark, which led to the townspeople to take her out and, you know, hide the corpse in the shack. One of the denizens of Sunnytown ends up helping Applebloom escape, and after traversing an increasingly dark and scary atmosphere, Applebloom finds the same exact figure that she followed in the first place, being the ghost of the girl in the fireplace, and then she ends up getting teleported back to Twilight. Now, what's interesting is that it seems like the show itself actually took inspiration from this fan game, when in the premiere episode of the 5th season, the main 6 come across a creepy town where every single pony has an equal sign as their cutie mark, and there's a clear sense of suppressed misery. Whether or not this was a direct nod or inspiration is unknown, but to me and many others, it seems like it was, which is pretty cool in my opinion. Another thing that personally freaked me out from a distance as a little kid was a game called My Little Amnesia. My Little Amnesia is a parody mod of the horror game Amnesia: The Dark Descent. who you may recognize from PewDiePie's old Let's Plays. The mod itself wasn't anything too crazy, but its character design is where it really peaked. I remember seeing this art here with Fluttershy when I was young, and it freaked me out so bad. I mostly remember seeing it on the YouTube sidebar as a recommended video. The video, aptly titled My Little Amnesia, features audio from the game, alongside some pretty haunting art of the characters. The battered appearance of the characters I knew and love, alongside the weird wheels that they had around their necks, made this art not only scary to my 9-year-old self, but also really saddening, as they looked like they were in horrible pain. There was a lot of art of this game, and in retrospect, it's really, really cool. But again, it wasn't so cool as a 9-year-old. Whenever I do a video regarding pony stuff, my social media algorithms always end up flooding me with a bunch of My Little Pony stuff. Everywhere. Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and I've definitely indulged in some of it, including a video that came up on YouTube called The Pinkie Pie Personality Paradox. I watched this entire hour and 12-minute video, and the passion for the show was so clear. So I reached out to this YouTuber and asked if they wanted to be a part of this video. So welcome PixieLocks, as they share what it was like in the Brony community as someone who's neurodivergent.
Hello every pony, my name is Pixie. I'm here to chat a little bit about my experience in the Brony fandom, especially as someone who grew up socialized as a girl, as an AFAB person, and someone who came into the Brony fandom quite a bit later than Raymundo did. I discovered My Little Pony at age like 14. I also have quite a bit to say about the neurodivergent experience and the autistic perspective, so allow me, if you will, to yap. So I first got into My Little Pony when I was about 14 years old. So like a young girl, which is almost the target demographic, but I was definitely at an age where it was like seen as not normal, or I was teased a little bit, you know, but I had my little group of other super nerdy friends, and they were all guys, and they were the ones who kind of pushed it on me. They were like, you gotta watch this. There's a pony named Scootaloo. I was lightheartedly hesitant and kind of joking about it at first. I was like fully in my My Chemical Romance Hot Topic era as well, and at 14 you're like just starting to be like, oh no, I'm cool. I'm too cool for baby stuff. But I did eventually watch it and absolutely fell in love, and it was the ponies rained down from the pony wall. I didn't have the words to describe this at the time, but it was definitely a special interest. If you're unfamiliar, special interest is a term for this type of really passionate obsession that autistic folks can often have. This goes way beyond a normal fondness or even being a super fan of something. It often really feels tied to our identity and takes up a big part of our life and daily living, and it really becomes a big part of our life. Like, the series Pretty Cure is so entwined with my identity at this point that it's just enmeshed in my soul. And not to go all John Delancey, but okay, even Raymundo mentioned in one of these previous videos that there is a huge autistic population in the Brony fandom. It just has that sauce that attracts autistic folks, like Sonic, like Pokemon, like Mario. It's got the collectability, the history, the bright colors, the amazing iconic character design, something about a very great new original character design with really nice bright colors, and there's years and years of things and so many things I can collect and then stack and line up, and so many facts to memorize, and so many anyway, it just has the juice. So if being a kid in the Brony fandom and coming across these kind of shock gore videos like Cupcakes or Smile or Rainbow Factory, if that wasn't already dangerous enough, being an autistic kid, really letting down your guard and engaging in your special interest, often to soothe, to regulate, and then accidentally coming across one of these horrifying things, thank God I can't imagine. I was very, very lucky where I was already 14. The guys in my friend group would joke about cupcakes and we knew that they existed, so I already knew, oh, there's a scary, like, chainsaw Pinkie Pie. I probably wouldn't like to see that. I used to be very, very, very sensitive to jump scares, to gore, to anything even remotely spooky. I just couldn't do it. Like, you couldn't watch a horror movie in my house, even a couple years ago. So this extends from, yeah, not even kids, but like me now? As an autistic adult who uses My Little Pony to soothe, if I got freaking jump scare spooked with killer Pinkie Pie, that would be really bad for me. And to this day, people are still arguing about whether the creators of these videos should shoulder any sort of blame or responsibility for kids accidentally coming across them and unknowingly, you know, consuming this gore content. And again, this might be so lame, but I've still never seen them. I'm too scared. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see Pinkie Pie be evil. If you know me at all, you know I love Pinkie Pie so much. I'm just all about Miss Pinkie Pie. Why are they always making Pinkie Pie go evil? Anyway. But yeah, I saw this just last week on my Twitter homepage, which, like, I shouldn't have expected better from Twitter, but I guess it really just drives home the point that, like, we kind of still need to be having this conversation. And not just in regards to these classic, scary My Little Pony videos, like Smile Like Cupcakes, but for, you know, children on the internet today. Because as this channel goes into quite often, like, things are not safe, and we really need to be making sure it's a good place to be. This whole thing kind of reminds me of the whole stim board kind of back and forth that happened on TikTok years and years and years ago, or I don't know if it's still happening. But basically a stim board is like a collage or a collection of videos, images, and sounds that are edited together to create like this soothing sensory experience for the viewer, and they're often themed. I'm not gonna lie, I loved stim boards when I was on TikTok. I'm a major stim board girly. Of course I want to look at like a looping gif of Pinkie Pie with frosting being whipped on the side and synth pop playing at the background all at once, like, yeah. But as with many things that are largely enjoyed by autistic folks, this was targeted and kind of ruined, where people would make stim boards or fake stim boards where it would start off really nice. And like, the whole idea is that you relax and you let down your guard and you just kind of enjoy it and let it like flow through your senses. Like, it really relaxes my body and like puts you, yeah, in a position where then a jump scare or whatever they were putting into these friggin' stim boards is not nice. You know, a jump scare is never nice, but especially when it's like things autistic people look at to regulate and seek comfort, or even just have fun. Anyway, so then this whole like system was created where in the comments of different stim boards, people would comment green hearts if it was safe and red hearts if it wasn't, because I guess at least for a while they probably caught on to this code or whatever. I don't know if the great stim board war of TikTok is still raging on, but yeah, Stevie literally was scrolling through TikTok. I haven't been on it for years, and they came across a stim board and we were enjoying it together, and I went, wait, check the comments. So anyway, this whole pony jump scare thing reminded me of this. Again, another thing a lot of neurodivergent and autistic folks really enjoy looking at, regulating with. A lot of them are fandom centered. There are lots of pony ones included. But I do think it's kind of cool that the community came up with like a countermeasure with the like secret code of the hearts, thinking that like these people won't catch on, that people are just commenting a red heart. They're like, ooh, I love the stim board. No, no, no. The red heart means danger, bitch. They're gonna spook you after that Miku gif. I'm really, really lucky that I came into the fandom at a time where I already knew that these videos were the way they were, so I didn't end up getting, like, scared or hurt or traumatized, God forbid, by any of these videos, but I know a lot of kids did. And the fact that just last week people are still arguing about it on Twitter, it is a bothersome issue. So thank you to Raymundo for making this kind of content, and thank you to you guys for watching this kind of content, and hopefully all together we can build a safer internet, etc., etc. Thanks so much for listening to me yap.
In late 2023, a TikTok user called Osu's Hat uploaded a TikTok slideshow depicting the health statistics of some ponies. The caption read, "Pestrobia is the flesh and mind-eating disease that was once originally the normal cold. The bearer of this disease first was Starlight Glimmer, in which she had spread by wherever she roamed, such as near the waist. At the waist are others who were to be cleaning. 4 of them exactly. 2 near a chemical bin, and the other 2 were near the gate. The 2 near the gate had contracted the cold as soon as Starlight Glimmer had passed to visit someone else. The 2 do not say a word about it as they come to the others, who were uncontrollably close to the chemical bin. Like a domino effect, the other 2 get sick as well, but to make matters worse is the amount of chemicals that they've been inhaling through their nose and mouth." This little post ended up starting something absolutely massive. Osu's Hat continued to post more and more Pestrobia slideshows. As the post continued, the ponies became more and more diseased and disheveled, some of this art being genuinely spine-chilling. This concept was absolutely beloved and started a viral trend of people doing their own takes on My Little Pony infection scenarios. From here, the floodgates had been fully opened, as many people who grew up with the show are now in their late teens and early adulthood. They revisited the show that they once loved with a unique twist, to say the very least. This is by no means a hot take in the slightest, but out of what I've seen, the art of etc. etc. is by far the most disturbing take on the concept. Here, let me just show you a bit of what I'm talking about.
Believe what you see.
These videos are some of the scariest I've seen in recent times. The use of really well-crafted analog horror and impeccable sound design leads to an incredibly captivating and, well, horrifying watch. This person's deeply talented, and I highly recommend that you check out their stuff. Of course, that's not all, with many full stories being crafted around the concept of different people. Many of these stories craft beautifully disturbing narratives around My Little Ponies getting horribly disfigured, which is a weird thing to say out loud, but trust me, there's some really well-made stuff out there. I'm not going to dive into the lore of these stories since this video is long enough, but I do want to take a look into why exactly such a thing blew up. I think a really important part of this to consider is a point that Bored Orange has brought up in his video covering the Infection AU. Also, like if you didn't know already, AU stands for Alternate Universe. That's it. A reason could be that these TikToks and videos hit very close to home for a post-lockdown society. Many of us experienced great loneliness and uncertainty in the height of the pandemic, which is reflected in these stories very closely. The mix of something so pure and innocent juxtaposed with the concept of a deadly viral outbreak is both horrifying, but also maybe a form of coping to some people. On that same note, I think nostalgia has a huge part to play in it. From what I can tell, a lot of the people who've made Infection art are on the younger side, and aren't necessarily bronies per se. There is a small but noticeable resurgence in the My Little Pony fandom in recent times, since the majority of people who watched it growing up are now at a point where they can look back on the show with the eyes of an adult, and many people found a lot of appreciation for it there. Hell, many of these people might not even be active fans of the show, but are still familiar enough with it that they now find themselves making art of it. Hell, that's where I find myself, despite what Wikitubia might tell you. I don't watch My Little Pony, but since it was such a big part of my childhood, I've looked back at the impact and history of the show by means of these videos, which has led me to grow fascinated with its impact on the internet, which has inspired my art around it. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case with a lot of people who are involved with crafting these works of art, alongside the stories. An incredibly effective form of horror is corruption of innocence. This particular form of horror is probably the most effective to me personally, and it has been since I was young, which is why the radioactive chicken head scared me so much. It's not a stretch to say that Gen Z culture is fundamentally built on nostalgia, and every passing year this becomes more and more clear. Many of us yearn for a simpler time, a time that feels all but gone. So we chase those feelings of childhood and joy through our culture. Tons of Gen Z fashion trends are based on fashion trends of the 2000s and early 2010s. Lots of the media that we consume is in one way or another related to the past that we cherished. When it comes to the art of corruption of innocence, it's really nothing new, but it has evolved and shifted with the times. In the past, the haunted doll trope was absolutely huge. Dolls have been a fundamental plaything for children for God knows how long, so to take something as innocent as a doll and twist it worked incredibly well. But we now find ourselves at a point where something as simple as a haunted doll isn't exactly the scariest thing in the world. It's a concept that we're all very familiar with, and at least to me has kind of lost a lot of its scare value. However, taking things exclusive to a Gen Z childhood and twisting them does work really well. Fundamentally, it's really nothing new. But in the internet age where everybody can create create art and share it, we find ourselves with thousands of new people making horrifying art that plays off the things that we all once loved. Analog horror and digital horror are a fantastic example of this, taking things like an old VHS tape or a weird creepy YouTube video and making horror art of them. The MLP Infection AU is like the haunted doll trope, but cranked up a notch, since it uses actual characters that people love and care about from a really deep place. Like with the Mr. Davie parodies that we covered earlier, the concern of the cycle repeating is kind of the elephant in the room. As a 20-year-old man, I can look at the Infection AU and enjoy it for what it is, but holy shit, if this was around back in the day, the nightmares would be awful. Aside from the really depraved stuff like the fluffy ponies, I think it's safe to say that some of the iterations of the Infection are some of the most scary pieces of grimdark fanfiction that this franchise has ever seen. Nowadays, it seems like there aren't many children in the My Little Pony community, or at least as there once was. Which makes sense. The show ended in 2019, so it appears that at least online, there are a lot less children going around and researching pony stuff. But here's the thing. I think a huge difference in the stuff that we've spoken about for the past hour and 30 minutes and the modern MLP horror is the way that it's presented. With most cases of Infection videos, they don't lull you into a sense of safety with their presentation. They're pretty upfront with the fact that you're going to see some scary stuff. It goes without saying that that's very different from the videos of our past that often gave no indication that the media would be horrific or sexual. This alone should deter a lot of younger viewers, but as stated earlier, it really is the parent's job. They need to make sure what their kid consumes is okay. Back in the early 2010s, there was a lot less awareness regarding the horrors that children were exposed to online with free internet access. But nowadays, there's no excuse. It is well documented. Kids should not be on the internet without supervision. And yet, they still are. So again, that lays in the hands of the parents. But regardless, if you do want to learn more about the Infection AU, I'd recommend, going to the source and just watching the stuff. Or you could watch really good videos, again, by Bored Oranges, as mentioned earlier, or by Izz's. They have some awesome videos on the topic, and I highly recommend them. Now, we've gone over a lot of really horrific stuff. I think it's best that we end this video by winding down on a more lighthearted controversy. This is the story of DerpyGate. You know Derpy, we've talked about her at length in this video, and now I'm gonna continue to do that. As you've probably picked up, Derpy Hooves was a character that was made out of an animation error, who was then put into the show, because people online absolutely fell in love with the character and started, making an entire personality around her. Initially, she showed up as just another background character, but eventually her eyes were given her iconic Derpy look. All of this culminated in something absolutely huge, when in Season 2, Episode 14, Derpy was fully voiced and addressed by name.
Now, careful, Derpy!
In this scene, Derpy's attempting to help Rainbow Dash set up a celebration for the character Applejack, but is not doing a very good job at it, causing intense structural damage to the town hall. She accidentally causes a lot of destruction, but is completely well-intentioned. In this episode, she has a bit of a deeper voice than most of the other ponies, and this was because voice actor Tabitha St. Germain wasn't sure of Derpy's gender, so she did a voice of a dopey teenage boy. This little reference made Derpy 100% real, and the fans freaked out. And it was such a good example of the staff directly interacting with the fandom. Things were fantastic. Until DerpyGate. That's right, we can't have good things. Hasbro, alongside Amy Keating-Rogers, the writer of the episode, began getting a bunch of angry emails from parents claiming that Derpy was an incredibly offensive stereotype of disabled people. They claimed that the character's eyes, voice, and actions were all ableist jokes, and that they were shocked and repulsed by seeing such things in a kid's show. Of course, this is not even close to the intended purpose of this character, and Rogers was absolutely shocked and saddened by this reaction. She herself is the mother to a severely disabled son, so she's an advocate for the disabled, and would never want to portray anything demeaning or offensive. Granted, she only received around 10 negative emails, in contrast to hundreds of incredibly happy and supportive emails, but regardless, the minority was loud, and Hasbro didn't want to risk harming their brand image. This led them to come up with 4 options. Number 1. Do nothing and just let it blow over. Number 2. Cut Rainbow Dash saying Derpy, but leave her voice the same. Number 3. Cut Rainbow Dash saying Derpy and change Derpy's voice. Or number 4. Find a creative way to change Derpy's name in a future episode. Many of the emails were complaining about her voice, and they deemed it to be similar to someone with Down syndrome or low-functioning autism. Here are some examples of her talking, so you can kind of make up your own mind.
I just don't know what went wrong. You okay, Rainbow Dash? Anything I can do to help?
From my perspective, I don't hear it unless I'm really specifically looking at these clips with that viewpoint. However, if you really try to be uncharitable, I can kind of understand what these people were complaining about. The other main point that people made was that the name Derpy itself was ableist, as derp was a word used against disabled people, mimicking the sounds that they would make. This claim is just absolutely false, as the word derp comes from a 1998 film by the name of Basketball, made by the South Park creators Matt Stone and Trey Parker. The word was then frequently used in South Park with the character being named after the word. From there, it spread to the internet, and was frequently used in memes that adjusted people's faces to give them derp eyes or other silly expressions. This was where the word really came to be known by a wider audience. If you were to really dig, some websites would define it as a word that would make fun of disabled people. But this is just not the general consensus on the word. Has it been used that way before? Sure. But those uses are far, far outweighed by its innocuous and playful usage. Now, despite all of this, Hasbro didn't want to risk anything, so ended up going with option 3, being cut Rainbow Dash saying Derpy, and change Derpy's voice and eyes. Fans had no idea what was going on behind the scenes until January 30th, 2012, only 9 days after the episode originally aired. The episode was taken off of iTunes, which was the only place that it could be watched outside of TV. People were shocked and confused by this, but some bronies caught on, and decided to show their support of Derpy by going over and buying We Love Fine's merchandise of the character. For some context, We Love Fine was one of the main producers of Pony merchandise, and they had some shirts of Derpy that were listed using her name. Fans thought that if Hasbro saw the uproar of support for Derpy, they would bring the episode back and continue using the character. However, if you couldn't tell, this was not the case. We Love Fine ended up getting heavily pressured to change or remove their Derpy merchandise, which eventually they did, changing Derpy to Ditzy alongside using kind of generic terms to describe the merchandise. A couple weeks later, the episode was back on iTunes and remained entirely unchanged, except for the opening scene. The entire scene was re-recorded, with Derpy having a much more normal voice and not being referred to as Derpy, or any name for that matter.
Now careful. You okay, Rainbow Dash? Anything I can do to help?
Not only this, but in most of the shots, her eyes were redone to make them less derped. Fans were destroyed by this, and were incredibly saddened and upset that their beloved Derpy had been censored and sterilized. This is where DerpyGate began. Amongst all the outrage and sadness, a bunch of different websites and forums were started in Derpy's honor. A particularly big one being the Save Derpy Tumblr page. Amy Keating Rogers ended up being messaged by one of the users of the Tumblr, and she ended up responding, which is what was being referenced earlier. Now, Amy's message was really genuine and honest, and the fans took it really well. But the fight to save Derpy continued to spread. It was around this time that the DerpyGate suffix was officially being used by people around the internet, with discussion of the topic being hard to escape, even if you weren't personally invested, or hell, even knew what was going on. Unfortunately, following these complaints, Derpy was rarely seen in future episodes at all, leading fans to fight for her return even harder. Throughout the following months, a ton of art was made in honor of Derpy. Hell, there was an entire Save Derpy website that was made, almost immediately after the episode was removed from iTunes. This website remained to be a hub for new DerpyGate information, and included a petition alongside fan art and links to external social medias, like the Save Derpy Twitter, which is one of the few DerpyGate accounts that still exists in 2024. It's an insane capsule of what 2012 discourse was like, and it's incredibly nostalgic. Fans fought on and on, trying to get Hasbro to restore the original Derpy, all the while making some incredibly sad fan art that genuinely brought a tear to my 8-year-old eye. On February 25th, the day after the censored Derpy episode was released, a video was released showing a still photo of a crying Derpy surrounded by mail. This would then be animated into a video that would essentially define the entire movement. This video was called Save Derpy, and was a genuine tearjerker. It features Derpy sitting in a dark room with only a spotlight illuminating her. Derpy laments that she used to be loved by everybody, but the second that she decides to start talking, people hate her. I'll let the clip talk for itself.
They want my name changed for me to go away forever. I never meant to hurt anyone's feelings. I just don't know what went wrong. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
As she cries, the Dead Island theme starts to play, only making the emotional weight of the video stronger. I've cried to this, and I'm man enough to admit it. And guess what? I was nowhere near the only one, as reaction videos popped up all over YouTube of bronies watching this video and getting really, really sad. As they should. In retrospect, these videos are really, really amusing, and they are absolutely great to rewatch in current day.
I love you, Davie. I love you. I love you.
My name's not okay.
Of course it's okay, Derpy.
My eyes aren't okay.
That's why we love you, man. How the hell can you hate on her, Derpy? How can you hate on Derpy?
We're here for you, Derpy.
It's a cartoon. Why are we crying? It's a cartoon. It's not even real.
Oh my god.
Bronies of the world, or other people that don't like My Little Pony, you may want to regret all the things you've said about My Little Pony.
You know what? I will say Derpy.
Not only that, but many PMVs, Pony music videos for those who don't know, were made in defense of Derpy, with my favorite one being Save Derpy, where a bunch of sad Derpy art is shown alongside a pitched up version of Evanescence's My Immortal. This video speaks to me on another level, to say the very least. Like, this is genuinely the type of thing that I would watch as a little kid and feel an extreme, deep passion for, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. What is really so wild to me is how directly the Brony fandom was addressed in the show and adjacent media. You would expect a multi-million-dollar corporation to just kind of ignore or brush aside these fans, since there was definitely a lot of bad talk around Bronies, and some of their online action could definitely lead to controversy, if endorsed, of course. But no, showrunners at The Hub, you know, the channel that My Little Pony initially aired on, fully embraced Bronies. Derpy was by far the most relevant example of this, since her entire inclusion as a character comes directly from the fans, but hell, Bronies were given a shout out by name in a My Little Pony promotional music video, parodying the California Girls. Like, look at this.
Hey there. Come on, Bronies. They know we're awesome. Come on.
How is this real? Not only that, but later in the exact video, another very beloved background character is referred to by her fan-given name, and not the official one that Hasbro gave her. This pony, who is second best behind Derpy, and you can quote me on that, was initially named Vinyl Scratch, but was nicknamed DJ Pun 3 by the fans, as a reference to actual DJs like Deadmau 5.
Break it down, DJ Pun 3. These are the ponies I love the most.
The fact that she also got a shout out directly is just so wild to me, and really feels like something that wouldn't happen in today's climate. Throughout the following years, more and more Derpy Hooves merchandise was released. The first being a Derpy Hooves figure, released exclusively for San Diego Comic-Con. However, no name was present on the box. Rather, she was just surrounded by muffins, which you'll soon see became a consistent theme with this merchandise. Later, in 2012, the Derpy Hooves vinyl collectible was released, which was part of a line of pony toys that weren't necessarily made for kids and were more targeted towards older fans, doing away with the brushable hair of the traditional toys and instead replacing it with sharp edges. This figure also remained unnamed, rather opting to have an I Heart Derpy design on it, which was an interesting but cute design. These figures were fantastic, and I personally had the Derpy one, and it was like one of my favorite all-time toys, but we'll get to that later. The I Heart Derpy thing was really only a thing with Funko's merchandise, while Hasbro opted to just not have a name at all and instead having a muffin where her name would be. This kind of led some people to think that her canon name was Muffins, which, while cute, is nowhere near as good as Derpy. A channel that I absolutely adored growing up was the aptly titled Derpy Hooves YouTube channel. This channel featured some pretty great looking animations with a fully voiced Derpy Hooves doing a variety of things like making muffins, talking to the camera, or the iconic Derpylicious, which was part of a wider trend of people animating ponies and spelling their names in a sing-songy way and then having them say their name Alicious, as a reference to that Furry song, right? Here's the Derpy video.
I'm the D to the E to the RPY, and no filly's got the moves like my big wall eyes. I'm Derpylicious.
I would watch this video a lot as a kid, and just like these others, it was a favorite of mine. I went back and searched through all my old YouTube comments on my childhood account, and found I commented a lot on this Derpy Hooves channel, and also many other videos, many of which completely unrelated to ponies. Like, here, check this out. I love Derpy. She my second favorite pony, next to Twillet Sporkles. She's so cute, I wish she was on the show more, and I'm a boy. Clearly I wasn't fully derp-pilled at this point, but don't worry, I'll get there. We love you, Derpy, and Bronies thumbs up. Sorry, Derpy, we love you, and I spotted you. I was a homeschooled kid, just give me a break. Derpy's the best! Hey, you forgot me, I'm one of the kid cronies, and I'm a kid brony! I love Derpy. And then this very historic one. Yay! Derpy saved! In response to a video showing Derpy's first appearance since DerpyGate. Anyway, let's go back to the Derpy Hooves YouTube channel. Every new upload had better and better animation, and the voice Derpy was given was quickly taken to be a preferred depiction of the character by many fans. Now, turns out this channel was awash in a ton of controversy with BFDI fans, which I was completely unaware of back in the day. But turns out, the owner of the Derpy Hooves YouTube channel was actually the cousin of one of the creators of Battle for Dream Island, an animated series that was incredibly popular online. All the characters in the show are anthropomorphic objects fighting over domain of an island. Can you tell I've never watched this show before? Basically, there came a point where it was up to a vote whether or not a character would be eliminated from the show. This would be done using YouTube likes and dislikes. Rest in peace. So this Derpy Hooves video uploaded a now deleted video asking their fans to dislike the teardrop video to get the character eliminated, since the character can't do anything. Of course, many Derpy Hooves fans were completely unfamiliar with BFDI, so went ahead and did exactly that. Of course, this led to the character getting taken out of the show, which really upset a lot of fans, and they felt that this elimination was completely unfair. This is now known as the Derpy Hooves controversy of 2012. This whole thing has led people to look back on the Derpy Hooves channel with spite, but I personally couldn't care less. Now, you may be wondering, what actually resulted of DerpyGate? Well, as mentioned earlier, after being removed from future episodes, Derpy reappeared in a Season 3 episode, where she can be seen very hidden in the background giving a wink to the audience, directly addressing those who missed her. Things got even better for Derpy fans when she reappeared in an episode by the name of Equestria Games. This time she was fully brought back and had some significant screen time, far more than she had gotten in a while. After this, Derpy appeared in the show, but remained without a voice. But that was until Season 5, Episode 9, the 100th episode of My Little Pony. This episode, titled Slice of Life, was a direct tribute to the Brony fandom. The episode followed the background characters while a main plot episode was happening, and heavily featured Derpy, who finally had a voice. She was voiced by Tabitha St. Germain once again, and was given a new voice, who, in my opinion, was the best she's had so far. In this episode, the Dr. Who's ex-Derpy ship was officially acknowledged, among a bunch of other in-jokes and memes that had been created by Bronies throughout the years. This episode was controversial, to say the least, with many loving it, and many others thinking it was just pandering garbage. I personally was obsessed with this episode, with it being my favorite of the show by far when it came out. Hell, I even made a review of it. Check this out real quick.
I mean, when I just saw Derpy Hooves say, I was like...
I think my videos have improved somewhat since then, but hell, you be the judge. Following this episode, discussion of Derpy picked up again, with people rediscovering their love of the character and recalling the insanity that was DerpyGate. In Slice of Life, she's referred to in the credits as Muffins, which made a lot of people think that that was her official canon name, which seemed to be the case, but no one called her Muffins, including the show's staff. In the script, she's referred to as Derpy, and hell, even the voice actresses themselves called her Derpy. Here's this adorable video of my little brother asking Tara Strong who her favorite background pony is.
I was wondering, what's your favorite background pony? It's gotta be Derpy. What's yours?
Isn't that just great? After Slice of Life, Derpy retained her presence in the show, and was featured more and more in her post office job. Another direct example of the fans' creations becoming canon. Surprisingly enough, Derpy actually ended up getting more speaking roles as the show went on. In the episode Best Gift Ever, she gets a great little scene with the character Rarity, and then in the episode Point of No Return, she gets this great little scene.
Are you alright? We just had a really heavy delivery today.
Not only this, but Derpy was featured in the My Little Pony movie as well, being shown around the background, and also was directly shown after getting turned into stone. Also, little side thing I wanted to share, when I saw this movie in theaters back when it came out, my 12-year-old self wanted the theater to be filled with bronies, but guess what? The theater was filled with little girls. Hilariously, I was disappointed by this. But listen, I'd already gone to a few BronyCons by then, and the one other My Little Pony movie that I'd seen in theaters, which was the premiere of Equestria Girls, was like pretty much only grown men in the theater. So yeah, my expectations were completely off, and I was sad. Derpy continued getting little cameos all the way until the final episode, where Derpy would appear for the final time. In this short little scene, she's seen delivering mail all these years later, with an aged appearance. She was there from the very beginning to the very end of it all. The show ended in 2019, which was also around the time that the Brony community sort of fell apart and became more and more niche. 2019 also marked the final official BronyCon, so the times of Derpy's prime were officially over. Left to be remembered as a remarkable little character who captured the hearts of millions and went on to defy all expectations with her inclusion in the show. Of course, Bronies are still around, but they are far and few between. Interestingly enough, there seems to be a sort of nostalgic renaissance going on with My Little Pony as a whole, as its prime relevancy was over 10 years ago now. The Gen Z kids who grew up with the show are now looking back and appreciating the show that brought them so much joy growing up. and Hasbro is very aware of this, releasing new My Little Pony toys geared towards adults. Some of said merchandise features Derpy, and fascinatingly enough, she's referred to as Derpy. Not Ditzy, not Muffins, not I Heart Derpy, straight up Derpy hooves. Seeing this is actually insane to me, as when I was a little kid, this is the kind of thing I could only dream of. Lofty dreams, right? Derpy is officially her canon Hasbro licensed name, and I honestly couldn't be more thrilled to see it. In 2024, Hasbro released a brand new Derpy hooves plushie, which genuinely looks fantastic. Generally, My Little Pony plushies didn't look very show accurate at all, so if you wanted a good looking plush, you'd have to drop a couple $100 on something fan made.
How much money is the Derpy Hooves plushie?
$4.75.
$4? Oh, 400. Oh.
But this Derpy plush looks almost exactly like those incredibly good fan-made plushies from all those years ago. In 2021, an incredibly cool series of blind box toys was released that featured My Little Pony characters, only they were sliced down the middle with their skeletons and intestines exposed. These things are metal and so incredibly cool, and I want a Derpy one so bad. So, I bought them both. So let's take a look at this skeleton Derpy first. If you saw the original DerpyGate video, you'd kind of see my whole process of unboxing and stuff. But I've made my own modifications. I made the little base half black for where she's a skeleton. It's a great figure. Very high quality. I believe it's like a vinyl toy or, you know, collector's figurine. It wasn't cheap, but I don't regret it. And the fact that you're seeing it here means it's a tax write-off. So I have also the you know, the minifigures as well. This is all for Polybius stuff, trust me. It's all for Polybius. You gotta just understand this is all for my band. It's all part of our aesthetic. It's just, you know, including this lighter that I found on eBay, which you can see has Derpy hooves on it, and it works. It's a legit Zippo lighter. Let's not distract any further, because the Derpy hooves plush by Symbiote Studios is probably, no, not probably, this is the best officially made Derpy of all time. And the first time around, I said this. I honestly, that new plush that came out this year looks so good, and I'm imagining it next to an Orion plush. And it would be really, really cute. But at the same time, I genuinely cannot justify a little like collectible figurine where she's half gory. I can justify that purchase to myself. I cannot justify buying a $60 My Little Pony plushie and having it in my room. Like I'm wearing her on my body. It's all over the place, but that's like a level too far into Bronydom that I just cannot cross. Listen, it's for Polybius. It's for my work. So what I'm gonna do essentially is, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to cut her open and put a magnet in her belly, and then like she's gonna go on my shoulder and stick on for our performances, which she can do now, but if you move a little bit, yeah, it doesn't work. But otherwise, let's take a look at this plush here, right? Surprisingly enough, only $30, which is impressive to say the least, because the quality of it is insane. Very soft, very cuddly, and the detail is great. The eyes are, you know, embroidered, I think. The stitching is really nice. The whole shape of the plush is very solid. It stands on its own, and it's one of those plushies that's like solid, you know. It's got structure to it, which I appreciate, because you can have it up as like a little thing on your shelf, and it's not gonna fall over and be flopping around everywhere, which you gotta respect. And not only that, but give me 1 second, she goes absolutely perfect with the Raymundo 2112 plushie. Like, actually, like, I had a feeling that they would go together really well, just visually and in terms of just the quality of them, because this is a really nice plush. I spent so much money making these, and there's a lot still in stock. Link in the description. I highly recommend it. A little Christmas gift there, maybe. But it's just the cutest. His arms move, his feet don't, but he sits super soft, super just like softer than Derpy. Derpy's a little more solid, where Orion is squishy, very cuddly. He's got the little mouth, he's got the little things on the back of his head, fully detailed, really adorable. I would recommend, like, if we were selling these on Amazon, like, you know how it has that little sold together or like often bought together thing? It would be these two 100% of the way, completely, because this is just a perfect matchup. You know, you can kind of, yeah, there we go. He's riding on her back. Isn't that just, that's incredible. That's, what more could you possibly want? I'm like fully fulfilled. This is it, you know, it's perfect. I genuinely have no gripes with the Derpy hooves. Like, this is as good as it can get for $30. The size is really nice. Like, it's just, The quality is unmatched. All the Symbiote Studio ponies seem to be very, very nice. Not sponsored by any means. I wish, though. That'd be sick, but I already bought this, so like, I don't know. I don't want to have any more ponies than, not to offend nobody, but I don't really care about any of the other ones all that much, so, you know. But yeah, it's a fantastic figure. Plush. This is a figure. This is also a fantastic figure. They're both great uses of my hard-earned money. Yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to the figures. Clearly I have a decent amount of Derpy Hooves merchandise, all for my band, obviously, because like that's what it's for performances and, you know, all that stuff. Also, I'm just saying, at some point soon, Rainbow Factory is going to be on streaming everywhere, and you could put it on your iPod or, you know, anywhere else, but ideally on your iPod. That'd be really cool. That'd be really sick. I couldn't recommend it more. I don't mean to just like sell you stuff at the end of this here, but there's stuff to be sold, right? Also, here's the Pinkie Pie Tulpa figure. This is funny because the reason she's got the black eyes, I didn't do this for this video, this is from my childhood, and it's supposed to be Pinkie Faz Pie from Five Nights at Pinkie's, which was a pretty I think it was popular. It was like a Five Nights at Freddy's AU fan thing where the main six, or I guess 4 of them, were Five Nights at Freddy's characters. So, and Pinkie was Freddy Fazbear, which is fitting. So she used to have a little clay hat, and it works really well. She's also the scary screaming Tulpa. So I don't know, I just want to point that out. I think it's cool. That's pretty much it though. So now we're gonna move on to something else. I don't know what that is just yet, but we're gonna move on to something else. So, that's pretty much it. Had to bring back the old outro spot, just for the sake of it, you know? I really hope that you enjoyed that video. I spent a lot of time and effort making it. I want to thank everybody who collaborated with me on this project, right? We had so many people. AddieHarajuku, thank you so much. Tetsuya, Shunks, Deep Blue, you guys were amazing. PixieLocks, thank you so much. I'm probably also forgetting some people, but give me a break, it's like 4 AM. And of course, we gotta thank the people that make this possible. The patrons. Every single one of you. Booty Goblin, Chuck Cheese, Evie Pacini, John Grob, Orcanus, Tortured Torchic, Dean Cribben, Pubboy, Guillermo Rivera, Stephen I, Galtatrial, Shadows Big Nuts, Papercut07, The Mela Experience, Mad_90, Rogue Reflex, and Cystix. Thank you guys so much, and if you're still here, thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate it. With that, I've been Raymundo2112, you've been a great audience, and I'm never talking about ponies ever again! We're good. That was perfect. Are you f***ing saying it was out of frame? No. Was it out of frame?